Astronauts to the moon.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaron from Jeranism back with another live video for you today. It's Friday, which means it's time for another Jeranism Friday Lounge. We're up to number 16 already, calling it 8 inches. Not for the reason that you might think, but for the fact that we've got Dave from Trinity 4 going to join us today, talk a little bit about the 8 inches per mile squared. Obviously, I've done some videos about that, and other people have as well, and he's got some stuff he's going to show us, so we look forward to that. Today, let's start out by saying hello to the panel members, making sure I know who's on today. First, we've got Bob from Globebusters. Bob, thanks as always for joining us.
Hey, no problem, but Jaron, glad to be here and really kind of excited to talk about this topic a little bit more today. You and I talked about this, gosh, it's almost been like 3 years ago. Yeah. And I think what Dave is going to bring up today still has a lot of merit. And I think it's one of those kind of things where mathematically it's like the 3 men in the hotel type of deal. But I haven't been able to see through it yet, but I know there's something wrong. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, no, it's always been a good topic, and I know I've kind of gotten away from it because it all comes down to everyone who's been taught a certain way and has been force-fed a certain formula or a certain way to look at things. And that's really how it comes down to, is sometimes how you look at it, like you talk about the 3 men in a hotel. Depends on the way that you say it, the way you describe it. So it's going to be an interesting topic. I look forward to that. So thanks for joining us. And I saw you just premiered a video on Globebusters, and I'm sure we'll talk about that too from Chris from the UK, right?
Yep, sure did. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit.
Great. We also have joining us from the land down under. He's a little bit hot today. That's Iru Landucci. Iru, what's up, my friend?
Hello, my friend. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on. Exactly. I'm start melting down. It's a little hot down here. Yes, I'm start getting worried about Antarctica because maybe the sea level is start rising up and you know that kind of things. I really hope that Donald Trump this time can understand me, because I listen what Donald said about my English, my perfect English. I have one of the most elegant, perfectionist English ever.
Probably.
I don't know what he said.
Yeah, he was out of his mind. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, man, completely.
If people
stop smoking CO2,
right.
please.
If people don't know what he's talking about, yesterday I had Josh Rosen on my show, who's a comedian and impressionist, flat earther. I don't know what you want to call him besides that. But he did some impressions on my channel, very funny. Did some Trump, did some Bernie Sanders, did some Elizabeth Warren, did some Stephen A. Smith, did some David Avocado Wolf, and he says he's going to get Iru's accent perfected, so we'll have to see if that comes anytime soon. But as Trump, he also said that he couldn't understand
a word
that Iru Landucci says.
Exactly.
But he also says Bob cheats at golf. So, Bob, do you cheat at golf?
I believe there is a lot of people that maybe it happened the same. That well,
Trump's not alone, is what you're saying?
It's not exactly. It's not Trump at all. But that is why I have you, man. That is why I have my perfect translator, automatic translator called Jeranism.
Right, exactly. And I know a good probably 15, 20, 25 words in Spanish. It's pretty impressive. I used to work way back when I was, 17, 18, 19. I used to work at Chevy's. It's a Mexican restaurant. I don't even know if it exists anymore. I know the one that I used to work at closed down. But that was the extent of my Spanish knowledge, was having to work with people that worked in a Mexican restaurant. Bob, is it true you cheat at golf?
Well, I have to, because the Coriolis just completely ruins my game. So I have no choice. When I play with Donald, he doesn't believe in that, so it doesn't affect his game. So what can I say?
All right, that's what happens when you go to Mar-a-Lago and play some golf. All right, we also have joining us Rodrigo Ferrari Nunez. Rodrigo, how are you?
Hey, Jaron, how's it going, guys? Doing good. Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to the presentation. There's something I have which is interesting. If there's time, later that we can
Sure.
that we can show, which is the kind of, I guess we can call it, boil it down to space crack, if you will, that comes off the kind of alternative archaeology realm as well, which has some truth in it. But then you see, there's also some funny stuff that we can take a look at. So
All right, sounds
see
good.
if we get to it.
And then we also have joining us for the first time, Dave from Trinity 4. Dave, what's up?
Hey, Jaron. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Yeah.
What's up is, it's all good here. I just wanted to say thanks to Bob for facilitating this invitation, because it's something that I've been talking about for a few weeks on my channel, Trinity 4. It only really struck me a little while ago, to be honest. I mean, it's come as a surprise that you guys have been looking at this for a few years. But my last few years have been extremely hectic along this journey. And about a month ago, I started talking about it. My pal Adam Meakin, who people know from the Globe Live tour, he was the guy arrested in Rome, the incident in Rome. He contacted me and said he had some numbers for me. And Chris UK, the same guy you were just referencing, who's such a great thinker and mathematician himself, he got in touch with me and gave me some ideas and said, yeah, I've been thinking this for a while. There's something wrong with the 8 inches. And my pal Jack Ebersky, who was Jack the driver from the Globe Live tour, he's a smart guy, and he contacted me yesterday and said, yeah, I've heard you're going on jeranism. Here's some stuff that I've been thinking about, and here's some of the sort of drawings and the numbers on it. So I feel like there's definitely something to this, and it's become visceral for me because I've been out in the street telling. I've said this to hundreds of people that it's 8 inches per mile squared, and I think that when people realize that actually it might be an awful lot more than 8 inches per mile squared, it becomes important to try and see that we can't clarify this and really pour scorn on this idea that we live on a spinning water ball.
Good. Yeah, this is great. I mean, one of the good things that we do is revisit these old topics, and Bob knows better than anybody that we've talked about a lot of this stuff 4 years ago. But what happens with this line of research is we usually sit on a topic for a week or two or maybe 3, and then something else comes up and we move on to that and we talk about that for 3 weeks, and we move on to something else and talk about that for 2 weeks, and we just kind of move along. And sometimes some of these topics just get left in the dust. They just, for whatever reason, people stop talking about them for a little while. It doesn't mean that they're any less relevant. Doesn't mean that they're any less important. And, it's kind of like when some of these observations come along, call it the black swan, call it whatever. It's kind of the same thing, is that they all have importance in and of themselves, but sometimes we just move past them, and it's great to revisit them. So I'm looking forward to revisiting this topic because we haven't talked about it in quite a while. So it should be interesting to see. Did you guys see, just to start off the show with something, did you see the video that Mark Sargent posted today?
No.
Which one?
Yeah, I saw it.
I saw something, but I don't think I watched it.
Yeah, that's it's incredible.
It's incredible.
We should watch that.
We'll watch it real quick because I thought it was really
I
incredible.
put it right now.
Let's put it. Here we go.
Yeah, please.
Let's see here.
It's mind blowing. It's
get it lined up here.
in the BBC, and I think it is the actor from THX 1138. If I'm not mistaken, you can check. But I think it's the same
that
guy.
one.
Have you seen this program?
Yes, I see that. I see today in the morning, but in another YouTube channel that has a lot of this kind of short videos with these kind of things. I didn't know that. I'm going to send you the link to the channel that I see, because I believe it's a channel, very organized channel with only 200 subscribers. I don't know if it was the original video or video maker or not, but yeah, I saw it. It's incredible. Yeah,
it's incredible. I always am shocked when people find things like this. I'm like, how has this not been found before? How has nobody brought this up before? So let's watch it. It's just a 5-minute video. I'll stop it here and there, but predictive programming in a 1967 BBC program called The Newsbenders, and let's just hear what they've got to say.
What do you want?
We'd like you to help plan the news for 1973.
Come again?
Plan the news for 1973.
This is going to happen in 1973. You're going to make this happen?
No. We're going to make models much cheaper. Then we photograph the models.
Fake newsreels?
That's fake newsreels. For the past 10 years, people have been looking at our fake newsreels and listening to our fake commentaries.
And they accept it for the truth? And you can do it. Stop 100 people in the street. How many of them have actually seen a missile or a satellite? They're just told they exist and they believe it.
Yes, you're getting there. I knew you would.
Well, now, the moon rocket and the satellite, that you can get away with. That's too remote for people to grasp. It's too far away, but this... I mean, you invented this village on the Indo-Chinese border.
Oh, yes.
Well, somebody could check up.
Very mountainous territory up there. There'll be no survivors in 1973. No rescue work. Radiation scare.
Yes. You can do it. This could be the news for 1973.
So I'll just stop it there just to kind of play it out. What he's talking about is fake newsreels, right? And saying that, you know, we want you to write the news for 1973 of exactly what's going to go on. And then he's talking about fake satellites, fake rockets, and how they're going to basically use models and take photographs of the models and then pass them off as real. And again, people will always believe you if you stop 100 people on the street. And just think of how prevalent this is in today's world, especially everything going on in the news today. I've seen a lot of people, I don't know about you guys, really flipping out about the coronavirus, obviously. Huge.
Yes, we have the sorry for interrupting,
no
but
problem.
yesterday the news here in Argentina called for, you know, a super big warning in the news, saying alert, you know, red alert in the news, saying that we have 2 people right now in Argentina with coronavirus, man.
Right.
2 people. Yes, and they create like a show in a hospital, you know, with the it's amazing the show that they mount. It's crazy, yeah. But we have 2 people right now, supposedly 2 coronavirus cases.
Right, and it started here in California. Now they're saying that there's a person here in California with it, and multiple people have been transferred here from cruise ships, and of course, there's a lot of flat earthers out there that are extremely scared of this. And I mean, here's the thing for me too. I mean, it's just, you know, anything in the news I have to question, right? But I don't know about you guys, but I've always been what you might call a prepper. So, you know, I'm always fine. I mean, I've got cases of water, I've got 5-gallon jugs of water, I've got batteries, I've got flashlights, I've got lighters, I've got canned food. So, you know, for me, it's just not a big deal. I mean, there were more people died from the H1N1. It just doesn't seem like a big deal to me. Now,
what I really recommend to put on in that list is the MMS. MMS, the chloride dioxide kills the not just the coronavirus, but you know, other virus, quote unquote. Because after all, we need to know what a virus is.
Right. You have to start there.
First of all, let's start for that, for that starting point. But I mean, I was this time in Europe. I was in the house of the guy who created the MMS or CDS, and he showed me all the lab that he has, all the things that you can treat with that chloride dioxide of chloride, something like that. Sorry for my English.
You got it.
Dedicated for Donald Trump. But the thing is that at that point, because it was the last month, the coronavirus start supposedly entering in Europe. So we talk about that, and for the guy who is a biophysicist, you know, he knows about all the delusion behind the pharmaceuticals,
right,
and how they create and manipulate the seeds, and, you know, implanting there via the news with fear and that kind of things. And if you have that kind of solution in your hands, because remember that officially the CDS is the most powerful water cleaner that it is used in industrial organizations to clean water for drinking. So I mean, you can use it for a lot of things. And of course, if you have some kind of bacteria or some virus inside you, you can start drinking, and in a few days it's gonna feel super better. I mean, and I test it all the time. I mean, I am not talking something that maybe works. No, it's a fact.
Right. Yeah, I just
when it comes to corona, can I just say, when it comes to coronavirus, for me, there may well be deaths associated to it, just like there are deaths with other kind of flu virus type illnesses, whatever they are. But I think what's more important here is what the government or the controllers are gaining for themselves in terms of people's perceptions of how they need to act when there are these types of outbreaks. And basically, we're empowering the government more and more to create exclusion zones, to stop traffic moving in certain areas, to get people ideated to this notion that we need to, just like in the movies, really, we need to seal off large areas of cities and towns and so on, and interrupt with things and allow the government to get more and more power. So it starts to feel like, that sort of Jade Helm stuff that we saw a few years ago, where it was like, preparing the public for the military to shut stuff down. So we're just giving them more power, whatever the virus is.
We need daddy government to come take care of us. And of course, stocks crash, which just goes to prove that these, fear tactics work. And I think a lot of it is wizardry. And, I just know when you look at placebo effects and things like that, a lot of people can cure themselves with just their mentality, right? I mean, obviously, disease being dis-ease. And once you realize that fear can actually take over your body, can cause you to get sick, and what better way to put this out there and get people getting worried, and it's just so crazy. I'm seeing all these people wearing masks, which of course are not really going to protect you.
It's an invisible enemy. You cannot. It's like Sputnik. It's up in the skies watching you. There's nothing you can do about it apart from joining the army or joining NASA and working for the country, to defend the country, because that's the fear then it compels people to do this, and then nothing happens for them unless they actually get in the military and then sent to places like Vietnam that nobody ever heard about when it was happening.
Right.
They were talking about the moon landings.
Yeah, you know what I find amazing about this is it was an American pharmaceutical company that created and patented the coronavirus. And why is that not being brought up anywhere?
Right.
Patented?
And then sent it.
Yeah, they actually patented it. And there was something really strange going on with that patent. It was like it had either just expired or just had been created, something like that. But and I don't remember if it was Searle or which pharmaceutical company it was. But it just absolutely blows me away that these pharmaceutical companies are able to create these things, and then when they supposedly get out and cause these crazy, epidemics and everything, they're not held accountable.
Right.
And this is just amazing.
Immunity, basically, for
they have immunity from a lot of things.
Right.
Vaccine injury as well.
And believe me, when it comes to stocks moving like this, I mean, it's just so obvious that the rich get richer. They know these things in advance. They're able to get into the right stocks. I'm sure that they're the ones who all bought 3. Yeah, but it's gambling knowing the outcome. That's the difference.
Right. It's behind the gambling.
It's like loading the roulette wheel with 22 and not telling anybody, and then rolling the ball and it lands in 22. What do you know? Yeah, it's cheating. It's just they know the outcome of these things, and so by planning they can. They kind of, and this is what, we're actually talking about, this predictive programming that we're watching on the show right now. This is why, as I'm kind of explaining that it's the same kind of thing, the news benders. It's very easy to project something, have the rich get richer off it. And like you said, Dave, you give the government more control. People have to sit back and say, oh, the government's doing such great things by quarantining. And like you said, even if this goes away, now it's going to be because the government took such great steps by quarantining these people and trapping them in their homes and closing schools, and it's only because of that we're all safe. If it wasn't for that, we'd all be sick, we'd all be dead, the whole world would be wiped clean if it wasn't for the government's doing such great work in stopping this disease spread. And again, I always tell people, believe what you want.
You should go on.
No, I was just saying. I'm just telling people believe what you want, because they'll always hear me, and then I'll get all these comments by people saying all these different things, and it's like I don't care if you want to be deathly worried and you want to, stay in your homes right now, even though maybe nobody in your town has it. Most definitely nobody in your town has it. If you want to fall for these traps, that's fine. I mean, I'm just saying what I do and what I don't do, and that's just for me. For me, I'll worry about it when half my town comes down with coronavirus. Then I'll start to worry about it. But because 2 people in Argentina have it, no, I don't think I'm worried. But go ahead, Dave. Sorry to interrupt you.
But all I was going to say now, it would be reasonable to lobby your government to ask them to vaccinate people before they travel into or out of the country, just to protect the people and this sort of thing. So it helps to bring about
forced vaccinations,
a vaccine program. But I think, Jeremy, we have to be fair to the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, they've spent billions of dollars greasing the doctors' palms, paying for golf days, holidays away, and all that sort of thing. So they need to be able to recoup their money some way. So if the government implement a multi-billion-dollar vaccine program, then yes, their stocks will see the appropriate rise and they'll get their money back. So fair.
Right.
But yeah, that's it. The government get to make more rules, and they create the rules in the crisis, and the rules remain after the crisis. Just like here in the UK, we've left the EU, but in fact the rules all still remain. I was talking to a member of European Parliament who just lost her job as we left the European Union, and she was saying, yes, no, all the rules are still in place for the next year at least, because we couldn't have no rules at all. So what we've got in the UK is now we've got all the added rules that we got for our club membership with the EU, and then the lawyers and the politicians will get to draw up a whole lot of new additional laws that they'll just pile on top of the existing laws. So, the government always wins with these things. And of course, what they need is old ladies writing letters to the politicians and demanding that they take action. They shut schools and they shut airports or whatever. So they get the power from that. The fear is what motivates everything.
Absolutely.
So we should have no fear of these things, and the best protection is a good diet. And if you're well, you'll be fine.
Yeah, the more fear that they fill the world with, the more leeway people will give the government in what they do and don't do, and basically, the more scared you are, the more you're going to say, oh, that makes sense that they're not allowing flights. Oh, that makes sense that they're not allowing travel. Oh, that makes sense that they're closing down my city. Oh, that makes sense that they've come to my door and asked to enter my house to make sure there's no illegals hiding here. Oh, that makes sense that they're...
that's a story I heard from China, right? That people were just breaking into your apartment to check out if there's people from someone I know who's living there got that happen. But if you remember, who could have thought before 9/11 that all the rules about airplane flight would be completely different? I mean, how easy was it before? And it really, if you travel a lot and you look around, does it really justify, I've seen the security measures they have, they don't really justify the kind of people that they're actually looking for when you look at it. Because there's some TV shows that show, for instance, how it is in Peru, where people are trying to leave cocaine all the time, and they're able to catch these people by the way they walk. They are experts. Like, they know exactly how to sniff them out. You barely need any security measures. Actually, you let them through security and you pick them off because they're acting weird, and they're acting weird in the way that mules do. They've swallowed drugs and so on. So the big lineups and the scans and all that stuff, that wasn't there before. It was a world in which that didn't exist, and in which things are just fine. It was just as dangerous. It had its own boogeymans. There's always a boogeyman appear. There's a catastrophic weather boogeyman. There's a disease boogeyman. There's insects boogeyman. It's like other countries. So it's take your pick. Like, every different period, you get the same kind of repetitions that they manufacture, just like pretty much like they're telling it here in the 60s, which is nuts.
Right. Yeah, but what they're doing cleverly is, if you guys remember back 5, 7, 8 years ago on Facebook, they had a dentist killed a lion in Africa on one morning, and by the end of the day, people were falling through his head. And millions and millions of people had been motivated through Facebook to take a stand on a particular thing. And so This, for me, was some of the early predictive programming of the social media network, which is designed to propagate the sort of, I mean, Trump tweets are a great example of how they've simply used the social media giant to basically bring about acts of government through Twitter. So
it's insane.
This is how and so we've all become part of the, it used to be the BBC or the CNBC or whatever. Now it's us through our social networks that we are pushing the message, whether it be fear it or screw it.
Yeah, it's so much worse than just the TV. The TV is a great way to propagate things because people, of course, watch something on TV, they feel it in their heart and soul. And now to have the ability to go interact with people and to have people confirming those fears and confirming those scares and confirming whatever that they just saw all together is just a mass hypnosis beyond what they ever thought would be possible. Well, I mean, I think that they knew it would be possible, but certainly beyond what we thought. Let's watch a little bit more of this just to see where it goes.
Not necessarily exactly like this. We only plan in detail 1 year ahead.
Oh, you only plan 1 year ahead.
Hey, tell me, what is the news item that's bothered you the most in the past year, 1967?
Well, it has to be the new American intercontinental ballistic missile, the Boy Wonder, doesn't it?
Just the one I asked him to set up for you. The new ICBM, codename Boy Wonder, with a much talked about Mercury warhead. I haven't any special effects up here, but perhaps with the proper sound. Blast off. And Robert Larkin, television director, high IQ, 35 years old, is scared. Scared by nothing. It doesn't work. It's a scientific impossibility. The same goes for the much talked about Mercury warhead. Perspex.
Well, if this rocket doesn't work, then the others?
They have a fireworks party at Cape Kennedy almost every other day.
Oh, that's great. They have a fireworks party at Cape Kennedy almost every other day.
Yeah.
So true. I was going to find enough.
Go ahead.
When we talked here, I was thinking about the nuke thing, how they've used the nuke war, red versus blue nuke threat as a massive, motivator. Yeah. So this is just an extension of that.
Absolutely. I just did a show. If people watched last Monday's Monday Night Raw episode 199, I had Jason Lingren on. We were talking about space fakery and stuff like that, and I mentioned Sputnik being to perpetuate the nuclear hoax, and then somebody in the chat was like, Sputnik had nothing to do with nuclear weapons. It's like, oh boy. Believe me, when you told Americans that Russia is going to bomb them at any moment, and then you follow that up with, oh, Russia has a little ball that's able to travel above your head, and you're able to tune your radio, and you can hear these little beeps. Believe me, that was a great way to get people to be scared of, as this guy just said, basically nothing.
Yeah, even Neil deGrasse Tyson admits that. He says that.
Right.
That Sputnik got everyone kind of pumped to get involved. But the thing is, what is kind of curious is how, within the next 10 years or less, is it that they are friends in space again, the Russians and the Americans hanging out, and then they have their joint program.
Yeah,
they remain
crazy.
Enemies on the ground.
The two other stories, right? Russia's trying to impact the election, and Russia wants Bernie Sanders to win, and Russia wants blah blah blah.
Still now, now. But
still
even back at the day, right? It's really it's weirder at the time it was happening. I guess they even got a Nobel Peace Prize for
Apollo Soyuz.
The shake your hands.
Right.
It's all a show. It's like we've seen Edo show before. It's hilarious like that. We should watch it sometime again. The Nobel Prize winners from last year with the physics, and I mean that is just priceless. You could make it up if you tried. It's just it's quite amazing. And some of the NASA stuff follows the same kind of. They have these. I mean, it's really. It hurts me to say, but it's like idiots. It's kind of like don't pet it. It's all like the same level. It's really odd how it stands for rigorous. There is rigorous science, but it's really not in astrophysics, and people really need to wake up to that. And it's quite a thing, because it comes with so much authority somehow, and it's odd.
Yeah, one of the things I think is what they were trying to demonstrate was these quantum leaps in technological advancement. Sputnik proved the idea that you could have an intercontinental ballistic missile. It meant that all of a sudden we'd gone from, a rocket that could maybe travel 100 or 200 miles and even then barely be guided, to these highly precision things that could travel thousands and thousands of miles and do incredible speeds and do things that, we'd never imagined possible. So this was about taking people into space. In fact, today, still people think that we have missiles that can shoot for 5,000 miles without, needing guidance or fueling or any of that sort of thing. And all of that.
Have you seen the Putin one that he had recently that kind of either showed that as, that crosses the world?
Oh, yeah.
It shows like a ball Earth and it flies around.
It goes around mountains and dives and darts in between these. Yeah, it's crazy. All right, we'll continue this on a little bit more.
Well, you didn't really believe there were all these things whizzing about up there, did you? Sputniks and rockets? Astronauts crossing their legs for 8 days.
That's great. You didn't believe that all these things were whizzing around up there, did you? Sputniks and satellites and astronauts. And then back here you've got the moon lander on a set with, the backdrop here and the lights. This is great. Let's keep going.
How long has this been going on?
Since Hiroshima.
And the H-bomb, you mean, that doesn't work either?
Right. Dirty.
Very, very dirty.
What was your first reaction? Relief. Oh, yes. Yes, it has to be relief.
Yeah, it's relief, and I think a lot of us feel that way, right? I mean, a lot of us feel so much better knowing what we do now. I'm able to watch the news like I watch the WWE. It's storylines, it's scripted, it's occasionally they'll throw a curveball at you. I thought this guy was going to win and this guy won. And it's just always you can look at it as entertainment. You no longer fall for the deception. And believe me, there's nobody watching WWE that thinks what they're watching is real. Right. And yet the product does well. And my hope would be one day that the news reaches that same level of knowledge.
It's like kind of soap opera, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, the same thing with, look at the political soap opera that's going on now, right? I mean, it's just such nonsense. Now, it's okay if you're able to watch it for what it is. If you watch it thinking that this is the truth, this is the, these guys are all paid to read off a teleprompter, and whatever's put in front of them, they're going to read it, and they're going to tell you it's the news. And believe me, I had a mom who watched the news every day and lived and died by what was being said. I mean, if they came on and said, elderly people need to get, a double dose of the flu shot, she was in the doctor getting her flu shot. I mean, it's just the way that she lived, and there's a lot of people like that. And, they told her that she had to worry about global warming, so she would always talk to me about, aren't you worried about global warming, though? Don't you think that, sea levels are rising? Don't you know? No, I don't think that. But again, to each their own. If people want to buy into this line, that's great. But I think that the fear is big business too, man. I mean, just think of a lot of what's going on. And then there's also the fact of the economy crashing at the time that they want it to crash. If you look at, the election coming up here in the United States, I know that's not as big of a deal worldwide, but it's certainly interesting that this all plays out in the timeline it's playing out. Let's continue on with this.
Very quickly as well.
Yeah.
Only 12 people are allowed beyond this point. Most of them work in the photographic department, taking phony newsreel pictures of our models and processing film and so on. Sit down, please.
In Vietnam, hundreds of people are being killed every week. Well, you can't do that with your models.
No. And you can't cure people of bad habits in 2 generations. They like to carry rifles. They like to put lines on maps. And we let them because we control the situation. There's no danger of world war. Just a simple choice for everybody. Capitalism or communism. Strawberry or vanilla. It all adds up to the same thing now we've got rid of the big bangers.
Well, how can you be sure that Johnson, Kosygin aren't working on other things? Poison gases, bacteria.
Pathetic man of your intelligence. You don't want to destroy the world, neither do I. What makes you think that presidents are different?
Well, they've made some pretty good stabs at it in the past.
There wasn't the right sort of control then. Nowadays we know better. Politicians are easy to control. The grosser mentality boys who like to be photographed getting in and out of Daimlers in Whitehall. They come right at the bottom of our organization. A few rungs up the ladder, there are the people in the top secret factories. Just those in a position to know they're making weapons that don't really work.
There must come a time when somebody wants to use one of those weapons. I mean, somebody is standing there with a finger on the button.
Well, that's the beauty of it. Nobody presses the button. We control all the crises. We build them up and we shut them down.
We? Again?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. Near the top of the hierarchy, there are the economists, top civil servants, top brass in the military. Those men who are supposed to view the nuclear tests and so on. And above them, CWNS.
Right at the top. Classified World News Service. Just who the hell are you?
It's obvious, isn't it? Just a very few of the top people in communications in every major country in the world.
Incredible video. Nice find, Mark Sargent, or whoever found it. Iru, you said you saw somebody else who found this as well, or was it any different, or same show?
No, it's the complete one. It's take about 20 minutes. I send you the link via the chat or of the Skype, and he has also. I didn't have the time to see it all, of course, because it's a very it's a very it's a channel with a few subscribers. Let me put the words in order. It's a channel without so much subscriber, but it has a lot of videos, and also, for example, the first video that this guy has in his channel is about the hoax of the nuclear weapons. So I didn't see it, but I know I didn't find anything about flat Earth, but I found it a few talking about NASA, CGI stuff, and nuclear weapon hoaxes, tyranny reward, things like that. And one of those, it's the one who Mark Sargent put, but the complete one.
This one
that
here.
one, exactly, yeah. 27 minutes, yeah.
You know what makes what movie this reminds me of is, have you guys ever seen the movie called Network?
Yes, and also it's like a mix with that and Capricorn 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Network was so amazing because they absolutely spelled it out and told it the way that it was. It's like, don't report the news, just tell people what they want to hear. And then, of course, you had that Don, what's his name, from the Eagles, with the Dirty Laundry song. I mean, that's what it's all about. News is like a predictive programming / entertainment business. But the one thing it isn't is the truth. I mean, not even close. It's just astounding what they get away with.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And a few episodes ago in my Spanish channel, I present again to new people, to new audience, the movie Network, and I review the movie, and it's amazing. I mean, unfortunately, you cannot you cannot use in YouTube because it has a very strong copyright strike. But everyone out there who didn't see that movie, please watch it because it's right on your face directly. And the nice thing with that movie is that everything, that kind of awakeness that the main character passed through, it's via like divine energy. It's not just in a materialistic world view. It's also mixed with this kind of ether energy coming to wake you up.
Yeah, people need to check out this channel for sure. The Natural, I've never seen it, just subscribed. But some of his videos look amazing. Really, he does an awesome job with thumbnails, that's for sure.
Exactly. And a guy from Argentina sent to me the complete version of the vendor news, and I immediately I start thinking, well, this piece of video is very well done. So let me see what the guy has, and I see how many videos the guy made with all the owned. He create the
thumbnails.
The thumbnails, and the title, and every video that you see is very well done. And I start thinking, how, it's really sad that only has 200 less than 200 subscribers.
Yeah, definitely. I have his. Here's the full video, so I'll be watching this after the show. This featured in 1968 on 30 Minute Theater. It stars Donald Pleasance, Halloween, Nigel Davenport, and Sarah Brackett. The device shown is bullshit, but they do track you always through your smartphone, internet, social appliances, etc. So, very interesting. I love finding channels like this that are kind of riding under the radar. 158 subs.
I find it. You not.
No, I found it.
Okay. No, sorry, man. Sorry.
I found it right now. I found it on my own. This is.
Hey, wait a second. I'm gonna set it up here. I'm putting in the score. Iru
0.
And even a friend of mine sent to me. So
Iru 0, Jaren 1.
Yep, there you go.
Capitalism, savage capitalism, wild capitalism is this.
Oh, this is great research by me. If anybody's keeping track there at home. No.
What Rodrigo is. Keep score, Rodrigo.
Keeping score.
That's good stuff. All right, so to everybody, check out that channel. I love to highlight good stuff like this. So check them out. The Natural, 155 subs, but we'll get that up, I'm sure, and I will add that to the show notes, and it will be.
It's kind of fun. Yeah, we'll bring the Masonic tranny governing system.
We'll bring him some notoriety, and then he'll get copyright slammed on all of his videos.
Ooh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Yeah, you're right.
Oh no, yeah, that's
that's always the danger. That's always
backfire.
I'm sure I'll probably get a copyright on this one today, just because I don't know what the copyright status on that video is. But we tried to use it for commentary. That doesn't always work. Sometimes my videos get removed for going against the YouTube code or whatever. What are they called?
I always win those, Jaren. I mean, I don't think I have yet to lose one. When really? It's all in the way you present the verbiage when you file the counterclaim.
Oh no, I'm talking about when they remove my videos for going against community guidelines. You can't. There's not even an option. They just take your video.
Oh yeah, that. No, I'm talking about when they copyright claim them.
Oh,
But yeah, the copyright claims are pretty easy to get out of. I've got out of like 95% of them.
Oh, got you. Yeah, a lot of those.
How do you say it? What's the trick?
Well, you use the verbiage of it was only used for X amount of minutes in a 3-hour show. It was used in a transitive nature. It was used for commentary, criticism, and evaluation. In other words, you basically just state every single requirement. And then at the very end, I always say, so the use of this clip absolutely 100% meets all requirements for use under the fair use copyright laws, and I win almost every single time.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. I don't get a lot of those anymore because I don't show a lot of video anymore that I used to. I know we do a little bit more on Globebusters than certainly this show, which is really we don't show a lot of video on this show. It's more supposed to be a chat. But anyway, we do have some video today because Dave's going to be joining us and showing us some things. Do you want to get into that, Dave? Did anybody else have a topic they want to continue on this, or should we move to that? But I just thought that was great. A very interesting find from 1967, and certainly the way that I look at a lot of things and the way I think that they orchestrate the news and orchestrate a lot of people's beliefs. And I just realized how easy it is. I mean, really, you could do a social test if you really wanted to by putting whatever you want on the news, and the world would believe it. That's all you need to realize is they put it on TV and people will believe it. People will be afraid of the coronavirus. Just think if we didn't have a TV, would you be worried about the coronavirus today? No. If you didn't have the internet, would you be worried about it?
I'm not worried about it anyway.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But there is people out there that are heavily worried. And, I tuned in. I never tune in to Alex Jones anymore. But this morning, after seeing so many people, I'm like, oh, I bet you Alex Jones is running with this. Sure enough, you go over there, and he's selling his food packs. We need to get these food packs now. This is the reset we've been talking about. This is the end. It's coming. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And again, I feel so much more empowered being able to watch that and kind of laugh and listen to some of the points, take the good, leave the bad.
I agree. One thing, Jaron, that I think the thing that worries me more than anything about this whole coronavirus is the way that everybody else is reacting to it. In other words, is this going to start, this major fiasco of people emptying out the grocery store and all the crazy reactions from people? I mean, as far as the sickness itself, I seriously doubt anybody's really going to be getting it. But because of all the hype and all the fear mongering, it causes people to be, crazy, panicky animals. Just like what Tommy Lee Jones said in Men in Black. They just don't think, they react, and it's a very visceral reaction. And that's the part that really concerns me,
Right. And yeah, exactly. And then, jacking up the prices on all these things, right? I mean, next will be...
That's what you see now, the scarcity, that when you close the borders, in 3 days, if there's no trucks coming to your town, you're out of food.
Right. So it's a very easy way to scare people and drum up some fear, and fear is big business, no matter what anybody thinks. It definitely is big business in lots of ways. And at the same time, I can call it big business, and it can at the same time make what looks like an economic crash. So it's a win-win for those at the top. But all right, let's move on. I don't want to drum on that too much. And again, to people out there, you can believe what you want. If you want to be extremely worried, I think being a prepper is a good thing at all times. It's always good to have stuff around your house just in case, because you never know. But is it a time now that, if I'm not a prepper and I've never cared about it, now today I need to go out and empty the grocery stores? No. But you should always have water on hand. You should always have canned food. You should always have batteries and flashlights and lighters and as Iru said, some medicine as well.
And in fact, you must have also, for me at least, because the thing with preppers is like the guys who are too much conspiracy. Because it's not just to be alert, to be waking up to these kind of things that could be happening, but sometimes the prepper go really extreme, and they lose the track, to be prepared for situations. So I totally agree with you, and at the same time I say, not too much pepper to preppers, because...
No, and I don't mean you should have, your whole half your garage filled in with stuff. I'm not saying that at all. But having a few things in case you ever needed them. What's bad about that? But as far as...
No, nothing.
Yeah.
Even I contemplate, even to a jet fighter in the garage.
A jet fighter?
Until a jet fighter in the garage. At least that, beyond that is too much.
Yeah, I have a tank in my garage, so I'm ready if anybody...
No, but maybe a space shuttle, because maybe you need to leave the planet, man.
Right.
It just reminded me of, do you remember 1984 Olympics and the opening ceremony?
No, I was 4.
Oh man, like you love to see it at some point. Like, it's worth a show, because it's essentially, I think Iru, not sure Iru's shown it. We were looking at it a while ago. It has a jet. It's a guy in a jetpack comes in. It's all space themed.
Oh yeah.
Aliens. A guy comes flying in a jetpack in a spacesuit and comes in, and they have the bum 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 ba-da, the whole kind of all the music with the spaceship in the sky in a blimp.
Right.
It was a massive mind control kind of thing. It's like hypnotic. These Olympic ceremonies are crazy, but this one from 1984 with the alien theme is like, wow, with the flying man. And, people at the time were probably thinking, I'm gonna get a jetpack next week. Look at this guy's just, everybody's gonna be, Jetsons worlds coming up. That's what was being sold since whenever the Jetsons. Bob, do you remember that from growing up, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, the same time they had the Jetsons together with the Flintstones. One tells you about the past where the Earth was flat for them, and then the other one tells you about the future with all the spaceballs and the flying cars and the flying cities, right? And then nothing happens, and then they keep on pushing things forward, which is what's going on right now. Now it's the massive recruiting of their whole new, I guess, Big Brother type reality show that they pretend is true, coming up with Artemis, whatever they call it.
Oh, Artemis.
Crazy.
And of course, there's always these, the recent news reports are that NASA has to change their plan. They haven't released a plan for Artemis 2024 yet, and they're going to have to change it. It's just, this isn't inevitable. We've already talked about it.
How much more money do they get for that?
Oh, man, so much more. And then I saw, there's actually, so I wonder if I can find it real quick. There was actually a schedule. I was like, oh, watch this. This will be hilarious. Because if you look at the schedule, I think it was on NASA Watch yesterday. Yeah, this one from Ars Technica. They actually laid out. Oh, I need to bring it over for people to see. There we go. They actually laid out this plan, which is hilarious. Somebody needs to write this down of what's going to happen. April 2021, there'll be an uncrewed test flight. They have October 2024 will be the crewed flight of Orion for human moon landing. And then they go on and on from there. But it's so funny because they actually have this mission laid out, but none of these things will come to pass. It will all be pushed out. It will all be, they need more money. As they get to 2021, it'll be, we're a little bit behind. We need more money. This will get pushed to 2023. 2023 comes along. They need more money. That'll push this to 2025. And it will just go on and on forever. It's what we've already seen. Why would we expect anything different?
Yeah, it's a long-term magic trick. It's slow dripping and moving, maneuvering, and more money coming in, and changing their story. Meanwhile, they're planning whatever's coming next for people. And then, like you pointed out in your film, they blame the president, right? How does that go?
But now they can blame the coronavirus,
right?
And things
whatever
like
they
that.
want. Yeah, that got shut down.
Yeah, that's right.
But
that holds you back as well.
It's easy to blame the president when each president has a maximum of an 8-year sentence, right? Or sentence. That was not a slip. They have a maximum 8-year term. It's just so funny that any kind of space mission, make sure it always takes 10 years. So this way, at the end of every presidency, you have a change of the guard, and you can say, oh, well, we should change this, and the new person comes in and changes it, and then you push out another 10-year, and it just will go on and on. Whether there's a 4-year or an 8-year president, they'll always have to push it out. And why would we expect anything different when it's been this way since, well, you can say Nixon, but really, after that.
Yeah, but supposedly when we was so close, because we have these 6 missions to the moon, and that is where you expect to keep going there.
Right.
But now it's had been past 50, 60 years, and we never get back, so we are more far away.
Why don't we have
60 years ago?
Why don't we have a base there? It'd be great if we had a base there, and then they said the coronavirus. Somebody on the moon came down with the coronavirus. How did they get it?
Wow, that's the magic, man.
Oh yeah, that's one of the problems, right? How many viruses are they going to take up in space and destroy other planets? But you forgot that they have the Space Force now, so that's going to all come together.
Yeah.
And I really imagine what people imagine, people on the street who believe the Space Force, what kind of stuff are they imagining that they're going to be doing? I'm really curious to hear that and to compare later with what they're actually going to be doing. If they're going to be cleaning toilets, what is it that drills they're going to do? What?
These people have I'm just reading this article. From this assessment, about 60 people at the agency and industry sought to determine the status of the program as it was currently structured. After the analysis, Lavero told staffers at NASA he had concerns about whether the existing plan would work. So it would even work. In particular, during internal briefings, he expressed doubts over the remote assembly of elements of the lunar lander at the gateway. He wanted NASA engineer. I mean, it's just so funny. It's just now their plan won't even work when they're going through the assessment. So if anybody thinks anything's happening in the next coming years, they are sorely confused. What is this? Do you want to see NASA return to the moon and prioritize crewed space exploration?
Nobody cares.
How do I vote no? Move the moon over? All right, good. Thank you. Take action. NASA has been tasked with a return to the moon by 2024. That's stupid.
Take action. Give some money or something, or put a poster in your wall.
I don't know what all this nonsense is. I guess I can send an email to somebody. Senator Feinstein. Oh yeah, I have big trust in Senator Feinstein. Anyway, all right. Let's get to Dave. I know Dave is on the show for.
But they show you. Oh no, that looks so. Come on.
This is real.
You're not convinced after seeing this.
Enlarge a video still. Video still showing the rendering of an exploration upper stage in flight. Believe what you want. Oh, this is a good little picture here. Nice little planes and satellites flying above a flat plane. Anyway, Dave, let's move over to you. Let's see here if I get your video on for everyone to see. Nope, that's not good. Let's take that off. I gotta get rid of this chat. Let me stop sharing. Okay, we should be ready for you to put your video on if you're still there, Dave. There we go.
Oh, yeah, still here. I'm still here.
Okay.
Okay.
It's, a little bit of background from somebody. Who's doing that? Hold on, Dave.
Sounds a little funny for me. I cannot hear you really, Dave.
Try talking again, Dave.
How about that?
It's a little better.
Good
Okay.
now.
Maybe I've not got the bandwidth for the video. Maybe I'll switch it off for now. Bear with me a second.
Okay.
Is my audio better if I turn off? It's a bit slow reacting. I'm just trying to turn off my camera. So is my audio better now?
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay. So let me try and talk you through some of this. Perhaps I don't have the bandwidth for a presentation. I didn't realize I was going to be doing this, just a bit of a mix-up. So I only knew a few hours ago that I was going to get the opportunity to come and chat on your show. So really grateful for that. Just wanted to say a few things when the conversation was flowing so well just now. I didn't want to push in as I'm the new boy on around here. But I think the Space Force is actually, there's this whole idea that's growing in people's minds, and this is all about what's in people's minds, that there is actually like a whole economy of activity going on up in space. And not only that the idea of UFOs, aliens, and there being a real space program, and that Storm Area 51, all of that is actually a lot of people, adults, if you really get them on the, like if you really get them to open up, they will say, yeah, well, possibly there is aliens and there are UFOs and all this sort of thing. So therefore, whilst not necessarily wanting to go out openly and say, yes, now I know why they have a Space Force, it reinforces the idea in people's minds that the government, they're not talking, they're not telling us the truth about all of this, but they've had to instigate a Space Force because they know something that we don't. And that's something is like the Disclosure Project would like people to believe, and that is that there's aliens coming from planet Zog, and we need to do something about that. And it comes back to what you were saying a minute ago, Jaron, that like our reality, or most of our reality, I think you said, is sort of created for us. I would suggest to my friends out there that pretty much all of our reality has been created for us, and that almost nothing at all that we have learned and we understand, and information that we get is real. So for me, I've seen so many things that are faked and have been false flags and have been leading us up some fear garden path. So for me, coronavirus and all the implications of it are very much part of that fear paradigm. Now, can they use that fear paradigm in future, as we're saying just now, to instigate martial law or bring about vaccine programs and insist on them, or stop people from working if they haven't done this, or prevent people from going here and put new restrictions up? Yes, absolutely. And this is what they need, why they need people to buy into it. So it's amazing actually to me sometimes to find some people that have been deep in the truth journey that they still can't see that all of this is a manipulation to get people to believe a certain thing. Just like the generation of the 50s and 60s were manipulated through the TV and other means, comics, to believe that, yes, it was possible to take rockets into a place called outer space and then maybe even land them on the moon. All of that was this sort of clever psychology. And we now know that clever psychology was just a fabrication, all science fiction, and none of it was real. So
Let me ask you this, Dave, because I totally agree, and I wonder if you have the same issue as I do, that it becomes hard, it becomes difficult, because you almost feel like you have to say that constantly. You have to constantly remind people of that. Do you see the same thing? Because if you don't, people will just fall back into believing it all and not realizing that it's a social construct. So my biggest problem is I don't know, if I don't mention it, I feel like then all of a sudden I see people fall back into it. Maybe that's my own problem, and I just need to not mention, because I feel like I have to mention it constantly.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize is exactly what Dave was saying, that in the 60s, in the 50s and the 60s, you can compare, just the amount of media that was coming out of the television, showing space and proposing space and pushing space ideas, and Werner von Braun and Disney. The amount of it it's staggering, because in contrast to what we have now, we have more variety. We have more, in a way, we have more choice, even though we don't. But we can look up all kinds of different things. We can look up just music or whatever. At that time, they didn't have that choice. They had to see what was on TV. So that those programs would be catching people in their living rooms, the families, and over and over and over and over again, reinforcing the space mythology. That's why, in a way, we have to kind of excuse some of the people from that period who, for them, is very important and so on. They really attached. They have a feeling about it was a good time for them.
Well, it was a perfect time for them to really enforce that, because remember, the TV was brand new, and it was just the time when a TV was being put in every household. Now that's a foregone conclusion, but back then it was such a novel idea, and everybody had a radio, and it was such a good time to get this all out there, to put it in schools, to put it in people's minds, because it's all a concept-based, idea-based, entertainment-based program. And
the War of the Worlds was before, right? Let's not forget that too. That was in the 20s, 30s. That's the same thing through the radio before TV.
Right. Well, the TV.
Oh yeah, the comics. The boys reading comics was a fantastic way of getting. And then, of course, today, boys playing computer games. This all kind of ideates what they think they might be able to do in space. So, no foul there. And Jaron, I would say to you, actually, that my friend, you have a role to play. Actually, it turns out to help people be that beacon, be that reminder, and help people stay on the path of, gosh, yes, we're constantly being deceived, we're constantly being thrown curveballs to draw people in, and yes, even seasoned veterans of sort of the truth, as it were, are sometimes get swept up in the tsunami of fear porn coming from the likes of Alex Jones and the mainstream media. So yeah, it's important to, and I think, for me, I don't want to say like there's no deaths or these things don't cause some sort of illness. We know that even with conflict, that there is real conflict and people really do die in these things. But it's the sort of the machinery that's designed it in order to create mass panic by using very few actors, and then the power of the media and the social media to spread that like a wildfire.
Yeah. No,
so
I think that's why I've just taken the position of just telling everybody, believe what you want. You don't, listen to me if you want, take the good, leave the bad, believe what you want, because I can't be the compass all the time, because I hope people are learning, and most people are. Not most, but a lot of the people that listen to me are at that point, and you feel like you're trying to address those half while the other half are still lagging behind. It just becomes a difficult task, but that's why my new kind of thing is just, hey, believe what you want. You can fall into it if you want. If you want to be deathly afraid of coronavirus tomorrow, I'm not going to come to your house and tell you, don't stop doing that. Don't be. That's up to you. But I hope that a lot of people have come to the point where they are in line with our thoughts, and I know a lot of people here have the same beliefs about it, and a lot of people listening, and then the people on the show as well. So it's up to each individual person how they want to take the information from that big entertainment box, how they want to process that information, how much they want it to affect their lives, because there's people out there that will let it affect 99% of their life, and then there's those of us who will let it affect 1%. And you get to choose. That's the great thing about being on this world, is you have to choose what you fall for. They're going to present a lot of things to you. They're going to present rocket launches. They're going to present moon rovers. They're going to present Mars rovers. And you are free to take that as you will. If you want to be a Reds rhetoric and believe it all and swear by it, go right ahead. That's all. You have every right to do that. And if I want to be a jeranism and I want to see it all and deny 99% of it, then I'm going to do it. And people can fall in between, or they can take one position or the other. To me, it's really doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that we live our life in a way that we try and build up the good and take down the bad. That's all I try and do.
Yeah, but I think for me, there's like this fundamental issue of trust You see, so if I'd been in a court of law and I've given you 99 pieces of evidence, and each of those pieces of evidence turned out to be a deception and a lie, why should you trust my 100th piece? I ask you. So, and the more important thing is that, you see, all of this is about giving your authority to a higher thing, an entity out there, whether it be the TV, the government, the religion. It's about giving your authority away. And part of this journey, or a big part of this journey for me, has been about returning that authority to myself. None of your listeners will know me well enough, I don't think, to know that my youngest child, who's just coming up for 3 years old, he doesn't have a birth certificate, because I refused to go through that birth certification process because I didn't want to give away his authority, or my authority as our parents over him, to the state. He has a passport. We've been able to do that without the birth certificate. And people are always interested to know how we did that. But it's very doable. And it's about saying, no, I'm not going to give you my authority. Yes, if someone turns up at my door and they're deathly sick and so on, and they've got this virus, then I'm going to try and care for them or do whatever. If an event occurs, then I'm going to be, prepared. I'm going to, as you said earlier on, have some gear, some water set aside, or have learned certain skills like woodcraft or some planting and something, so that if the shit hits the fan, I'm not just sitting on my sofa eating popcorn and going, well, how's the government going to help me now?
No. Right.
Well, that's exactly the problem. We got to stop asking the government for help. We've got to stop giving them reasons and excuses to be standing at the door and the gates saying, where's your paperwork? You can't come here unless you've done this or had that or paid this or all this sort of thing. This is where I think, craftily the system has robbed us of our own true power, and where we need to be like vociferous in saying, shit, no, we need to take our power back, and there is no authority higher than us, but we keep giving it away. And this is part of my journey, part of my mission.
Why trust these known liars? Why trust these known criminals, especially when they take action that is supposed to build them up, is supposed to make us fall back in love with these liars, is supposed to make us trust these criminals again. That's their intent. That's their goal. And to be able to recognize that and say, no, people who have lied to me before, people who continue to deceive, people who continue to push fear, people who continue to push despair, I'm able to step away from them and say, I just won't fall for it anymore. And there's no better feeling than that for me. So and to live my life with that is so different.
It goes beyond the joke I made earlier on about money, them being in it for the money. That's kind of like, we know that, but it's like entry level kind of conspiracy, light, if you like, saying, they're doing it to create a business model for the generating of billions of dollars or whatever. For me, the money is just the grease that keeps the machine working. But in fact, it's something much deeper, something much more spiritual that they're seeking. So when we give away our power, we give away something much sort of higher that's beyond this material thing. But I won't go into that. I won't go too far into the weeds on that right now. But yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It comes down to it's your choice, right? And that's the biggest danger to humanity, is giving away that choice. And I just wanted to say a shout out to the super chat so far. Thank you, Rhino. He says, support what you like, folks. Really appreciate that. Conflect said, support what you like or it will go away. One of your subscribers. Thank you. And then he sent another one telling people to enjoy your weekend. I agree. Enjoy your weekend. But back to Dave. Dave's going to talk to us a little bit about his feeling regarding the 8 inches per mile squared, which, of course, we've all been taught. We've all been told. Well, not taught. It was something that flat earthers had to basically start talking about to get this kind of formula. People really wanted a formula of how much the earth should curve away from a person. And, of course, there's a formula that they've given us that they say breaks down after about 1,000 miles and completely breaks down after, say, 6,000 miles. Why? Well, because, the curvature would fall back under your feet. But anyway, I'll let Dave take it from here and kind of explain why he has issues with it.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is quite exciting. But now what we've got to do, guys, is we've got to think. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and debunk the 8 inches per mile squared, and how the observer's perspective, and we've all talked about perspective, and we've all talked about angular resolution and atmospheric conditions and so on, but how the observer and the observer's perspective has been misappropriated in the calculation of the formula for curvature. And I talk a little bit about how the maths or the trigonometry has been used to create an unrealistic model for a globe or a spherical Earth problem. And then once I've sort of shone a little bit of a light on the 8 inches squared, I'm going to try and get your listeners to reimagine the globe with a 4K radius. And then we can also have obviously some discussions about the method of the theoretical measurement that we should see, the amount of curvature that we would expect to see if we lived on a ball, given the dimensions that we are told it is. I know that someone sent me, when I started talking about this, someone sent me your video, Jaron, and you'd come up with a slightly different number from me, well, quite different number from me, but we were on the same kind of track, and I was like, okay, we can, definitely talk about how we think that it should look. But before we get there, let me start by saying why it matters, because you see, what you actually see in reality is absolutely not what we should be seeing given the parameters of the theoretical ball model. And what, of course, the engineers of yet another layer of deception had to do, they were forced to do, was to use what we actually see. So in reality, we actually see 3, 4, 5 miles down into the distance. We go up higher and we can see further. We all understand that. But, on a decent weather day, 3, 4, 5 miles is what we could see. So in terms of how they wanted to create a formula to make us think that we still were looking out over onto a ball, they had to give us a form of maths that would allow for that. And so the 8 inches per mile squared kind of does that a little bit, because for the first mile all around you, there's only 8 inches of curvature. And in the second mile all around you, there's another 24 inches of curvature. So by the time you're up to, let's say, 10 kilometers or 5 kilometers or 3 miles, hope you don't mind me switching to metric, but I've been doing some of these sums in my head in a metric and imperial fashion. But at 5 kilometers in front of me, I'm actually standing in the center of a 100 square kilometer box, because it's 5 in front of me, 5 to the left, 5 to the right, and 5 behind me. So it's 10 by 10, this box. It's a 10 square kilometer box, and it's got something in the region of, 40, 50 inches of curvature, maybe a little bit more, not much, not a lot. And actually over the distance, as we all know, when we try to convince family members that there's 8 inches per mile squared, over the distance, people can be excused for saying, well, maybe the ship is going away, maybe I'm not seeing things in the distance. Now, we know with the P900 we can see things much further, but initially when they came up with 8 inches per mile squared, because remember, Botham and all these people were using if they're not disinfo, they were truly, honestly, simply using the 8 inches per mile squared and accepting that to be the model. And again, because it's not an awful lot in distance, in the near distance that we can see, people have been excused for saying, well, it could be there. But I started to think, I've had a few weeks of respite where I'm staying at the moment, and I've really had time to think about a few things, and this is something that I started thinking, well, I've always trusted everybody else's maths, and the mathematicians have looked at this and so on, but have I kind of really scrutinized this 8 inches per mile squared? And the truth was, I hadn't really. So I looked at some of the numbers, and I started thinking, like in the first, let's just say, let me break it down like this. And this is maybe why I lost some of my early arguments when I was trying to push the 8 inches per mile squared. And that is that if you got 10 friends and you put them on little rafts 1 mile apart from each other into the distance, that would be a total of 10 miles from the beach, and you gave each of them a radio and a walkie-talkie, and you asked them to report to you as the ship went past them towards the next mile marker, how much does the ship descend? Each of them in turn would report back to the beach and say to me, Dave, it's 8 inches. Dave, it's 8 inches. Guy number 9 would say to mile 10 would say, Dave, it's 8 inches. Even the ship's captain would say, yes, it's 8 inches, because that's the formula you told me. The first mile around me is 8 inches. But I would be standing on the beach saying, well, no, at 9 miles, it must be going down by 10 feet or something like that. It's got to be starting to drop exponentially rapidly. But each of your friends are saying, no, I promise you, it's only going down 8 inches.
Dave, I have to crack up about this, because this is exactly what Jaron was saying, several years ago.
It's identical. Yeah, it's great to hear again. But and again, I just got told by everyone that I was looking at it wrong, and that no, it accumulates, and you can't look at it in segments. You can't cut it up in pieces. So I totally see where you're going, and the 10 boats example is a great one. You're absolutely right that each, that's the kind of way I kept looking at it was, well, what would each person see? And if you added up the 1 mile person, remember, Bob, I was talking about that if we split it into 25,000 people 1 mile apart, then all of a sudden the entire curvature of the globe becomes 8 inches times 25,000, right? I mean, that's what I was getting into, is if it's 8 inches per mile and each person only sees 8 inches of curvature in that 1 mile, then 8 times 25,000 would be 200,000, and then you divide that by 5280, and you get. I'm sorry, no, I would divide that by 12. Sorry, let me do that again. If you have 8 inches times 25,000 miles equals, and then divide that by 12.
It'd be 3.15 miles total.
Right. Yeah. So that's ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. 16,000 feet, right? Divided by 5280. And all of a sudden it's 3.15. Yeah. So, I mean, that's how many miles. There'd be 3 miles of curvature in the entire 25,000 mile Earth.
Okay. And so, the point being that if a ship was sailing upon the oceans of this idea, the sphere, then the ship itself would be actually within the sort of water of the sphere, and therefore you could almost say it's the bending of the water is the bending of the ship. They're always going to bend at the same. They're all going to bend at exactly the same amount, and that amount of bending around the sphere is going to have no bearing, or rather, my watching the ship go past my town or my harbor or whatever. My watching it has absolutely no bearing on the amount that the ship should follow the curvature of the Earth. But this is me, and I've been standing on the street saying, look, if I'm standing here, then I should see 2 meters of curvature, or 200 inches of curvature at 5 miles. And we don't see that, which is fine. I mean, obviously we know that we don't see that, but what it's done is created in my mind, and I suspect similarly for yourself, it's created in my mind an almost flat spot where I live, where I happen to be standing and making these measurements. It's made a flat spot where I am, and then 10, 20, 50, 100 miles away from me, things are getting more steep. And eventually at 1,000 miles, they're starting to become ball-like in that they are dropping down rapidly. And then by the time you get to 2,000 and 3,000 miles, then my ship is actually falling horizontally down away from me very quickly. It's basically traveling a mile down and a mile away from me at the same time. And all of this is kind of nonsense, I know. But the 8 inches, the sort of the idea that now wherever I happen to stand, I'm not only on the top of the ball, but the ball has a more gentle approach. Behind me, the ship that approach from behind me only had 8 inches to deal with, and as it came past me, it only had 8 inches to deal with. The next mile, it had 24 inches. The next mile, you know the score. So that doesn't make sense to me anymore, and it's far more logical to assume that whatever the amount of curvature is, or the amount of bend or globe curve that comes in the way of something, is going to be the same from mile to mile to mile to mile to mile. So if someone's a mile away, whether they're in the south or the north of the world or this globe, it would be the same amount for any people landing there, arriving there, observing there. And if the thing was 2 miles away, it would have double that amount.
Right. Dave, can I interject something here? I kind of playing devil's advocate. When they're talking about the 8 inches per mile squared, first of all, that is kind of an averaged figure, if you will. And you also have to understand that that is taken from the perspective of from where you are, right? In other words, you're standing at a single point, and even if you think about it on a ball, the further you go out, the more severe that drop-off starts becoming. So again, it's kind of an averaged type of number, when looking at it from your point of view. But nevertheless, there is still an absolute z-axis drop, and that I think is kind of the spirit of this. Right. Even though the Sagitta, when you look at, we calculate it through the Sagitta, those numbers become very, very similar. And Jaron, if you would, I dropped a Word document in the chat that is called Curvature Calculations. If you would open that up, that is I'm sorry?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I missed a little bit of feedback. If you would open that document up and show it, it shows a comparison between like the Sagitta, the 8 inches per mile squared, and the AutoCAD numbers. And you can see where there's very, very minute variances, between the three formulas. And
which of the three documents do you want me to open? I see
the Word document. It's called Curvature Calculations. It's the very top one.
Gotcha. Okay.
One question, Bob, and Dave, the observation that you talked about, Bob, in Hawaii, the two islands that are how far apart? Over 100 kilometers?
They're about 90 miles. So yeah, a little over 100 miles. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that the curvature is just not empirical. That just proves it beyond a shadow of a doubt that and thinking about the calculation, which is basically the geometry of a ball, which is what they show us. Yeah, I see that there's a lot to say about it, but that observation by itself for me is conclusive that there's just basically no way that it is there, and that's it.
Yeah, let me just interject and say, because I had to come out of my own channel and remind the guys that follow my channel. People were saying to me on my channel, "You were a flat earther." People were starting to question whether I was sort of, going back and trying to imagine that there was curve. We know that water is level. So, distance photos, the J. Tolan stuff, the world record photo over water, all these sort of things are absolute, proof upon proof that water is what our common sense tells it is, and that is level and flat. But here's what I want to ask you, Bob, because, coming back to, this is, I think, where there's word trickery in play. And I'm not at all saying that this is you, but this is where we've been tricked in word play. And that is that let's imagine that it's no longer my 10 friends sitting on beach lilos. They're on a pontoon on the water. And it's 10 little islands. And each of those little islands is only, 1 foot above the water. So they're not sticking out very far. And each of these 10 islands are 1 mile away from me. Now, the globe defenders, or people who say that this is the mass, is 8 inches per mile squared, are not saying to me that what they're saying is that the island let me reverse this back a little bit. What they're saying is that the objects that are 10 miles away should be X amount under the curve of the Earth. And 10 miles, they say, is 66 feet. So unless the 10th island was 66 feet tall, we argue with them that we shouldn't be able to see any of it. So the point here is that what we're saying is that the water physically is bending to 66 feet at 10 miles away from me. See, because the island, when I argue with someone and say, okay, so you've got a ship that's 2 meters tall, at what distance should that ship be going out of my view? Well, I'm taking a 0 point. When I stand on the beach and say it's 8 inches for the first mile, depending on I'm 6 foot tall or whatever, so it might be a little bit less or it might be a bit more depending on my height. But when we say it's 8 inches in the first mile and it's 66 feet in the 10th mile, that's we're arguing should or shouldn't be there. So we're saying in the physical world, there should be 66 feet of drop at 10 miles. That's how I've always interpreted the 8 inches per mile squared. So that the globe, its view of it, I mean, I know that, my perspective on something can change, and I'm higher or lower in a hot air balloon, perhaps, and I can see further. But in essence, we're saying we fix it based on, and that was at McWest, we fix it based on a certain measurement per mile squared. And then obviously the height of the observer has a bearing on how far we could see. Now, guys, what I'm saying is, firstly, it's got to be the same amount, no matter where I stand, because a guy who's watching my ship from, say, 100 miles away from me would say that the next mile that ship is going to travel, according to my formula, according to how much I should lose it, should be hundreds of feet. And I'm saying, no, it's 8 inches.
Dave, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt, but who's sharing their screen right now? I don't know who's sharing. Welcome, Austin, by the way, to the show. Is that you, Bob, sharing?
It's me sharing the screen. I just thought I'd bring it up.
No, thank you, because I was having some issues with, for some reason, OBS, when I open and try and display the Word page, it's not showing the text on some of these boxes, so it's better if you share. This is perfect. So you can kind of share from there. But no, I mean, to me, it's just obvious that they've reverse engineered the optics. And that's, the point that I got to, Dave, where I kind of drew the line is I said, okay, wait a second. We don't see curvature. Everything that I see can be explained by perspective. So it doesn't matter what the curve calcs say to me anymore. That's the point I finally got to. And it's fun to beg the question. It is fun, but it's, as Nathan Oakley says, it's a perspective hijacking curvature formula. And it's like you said, it's based on what we see. They had to build it around what we can see, not necessarily build it around some ball. But anyway, go ahead, Bob. Explain what we're looking at here, just so people know what they're seeing.
Okay, this is a chart that Kirk, Curious Life of a Flat Earther, created for us a long time ago when we were talking about airplanes, and we did the show basically talking about airplanes and how much curvature, z-axis drop they would have to go down. And there was a lot of controversy at the time about the accuracy of 8 inches per mile squared, right? And so there are 3 different ways essentially to render it. Oh, there's probably more than that, but the 3 most popular ways of rendering it was through AutoCAD, through calculating it through the sagitta, or the tangent of the apex of the curve, essentially, and the simple 8 inches per mile squared, right? And when you look at it, the first mile into the sagitta turns out to be about 8 1/4 inches, versus 8 on AutoCAD. Then 32.31 inches for 2 miles, or 32 inches, 8 inches. In other words, the 8 inches per mile squared is sort of a generalized formula. But the point to all of it is that people were saying, well, you get up to, X amount of curvature, like, when you get, for example, if you go all the way up to 3959, or the diameter of the Earth, you can see the 8 inches per mile squared down here at over 4,000, almost 5,000 miles of curvature is way, way, way off, almost by 1,000 miles, over 900 miles. So obviously, with those kind of distances, it doesn't work. But the claim was at the time is, hey, flat earthers are only using it for, up to 100 miles, 200, maybe even 300. And when you look at those distances, here we have the 300 mile. We've got 11.36 miles on the sagitta, and you have that same figure, 11.36 miles on the 8 inches per mile squared, and the same on an AutoCAD rendering. So in other words, the whole point of all this is that no matter how you rendered it, it's good really up to 1,000 miles, because even at 1,000 miles, there's only about less than an error, a 1 mile error variance, and that's kind of the whole point.
I think I know what you forgot. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
You forgot to correct for gravity.
Oh yeah, that's obvious. Yeah. And refraction.
Yeah, for me, I think that first, the fact that clouds are not seen from below as they go away from us, which is something here is very flat, so I can see quite far, and I think it's many more miles than what we expect. And also that observation from that guy that from 500 kilometers away filmed sprites at less than 100 kilometers high, which is quite a feat when you think about it. So I think those things are telling that what we see around us, if this guy is able from the ground to film something 100 kilometers high that's 500 kilometers away, it means that you have to have direct sight of this thing. So that means that a circle around you,
the line of sight, you mean?
Line of sight, yeah. So you would have a circle around you that's at least in the sky. I don't know how close to the horizon he's making these observations, but if he can reach 500 kilometers, it means it has a circle 500 kilometers around him.
But I mean, the thing about these numbers, Bob, is they only fall apart once things get out of your ability to see anyway. Right?
Exactly.
I mean,
that was the whole point.
Yeah, they maintain the same basic structure. And the one that I've always liked, I just like the Sagitta, because the Sagitta really brings in the idea of the bulge. Because if you're talking about standing on the top of a sphere and you're looking off in the distance and somebody says, why can't I see around that bend? The real reason that you can't see around a bend would be because there is an obstruction in your line of sight. Now, we've gone out and shown that we can see beyond that obstruction, which is physically impossible in my mind. There is no looming. There is no way things behind that obstruction are able to, for some reason, bring themselves up to our observation point, which, and again, you have to look at the IIG and their explanation to me that it doesn't matter how far we see, that simply everything that we see is traveling along the curve of the Earth. So, as I've said numerous times, it becomes a breakdown.
What it means, Sagitta?
Sagitta is like the hump.
Okay.
It's the tangent from the apex of the curve. That's what the Sagitta calculation is.
Okay.
Right. So if you drew a line between 2 points on that circle, which it's usually a circle, it's usually not a sphere that we're looking at, right? They draw it as a circle. They draw 2 points. You draw a straight line between them, and then the line up to the bulge height is kind of the Sagitta. But it doesn't break down. It maintains the same, and I know Curious Life has done some great work on that. But really, it comes down to that line of sight. And like I've said with it now they've gotten to the point where they say if we can't see things in the distance, it's because of the bulge. And if we can see things in the distance, it's because things travel around the bulge. I mean,
the rising horizon beyond the horizon as well.
Right, it's just a great way out of anything. I mean, if you're a globe earther, what more comfortable position is there to be in than to say, well, you can't see things because of the bulge, and when you can see things, it's because things are traveling around that bulge.
Right, and I think Dave's whole point was, and he also came to something very similar. In fact, he came to the same conclusion I did. And if you remember, Jaron, you and I came up with two different answers. I came up with a 0.636 of a mile per mile curvature, and you came out with a 0.318. And I eventually capitulated to your idea of the 0.318 being more accurate, because you were saying that no matter where you were in that curve inside of the circle, the curvature had to remain exactly the same. And the problem with the 0.636 is you're only taking half of that circle into consideration. So really, I think that yours was more accurate. But when you look at that, what that means is that for every mile you go forward, you literally are dropping 1/3 of a mile down the z-axis, and that's crazy.
Right.
Right.
That's crazy, and that may be what Dave's saying, is that the curvature of a ball Earth of 25,000 miles would be far more than what this formula leads you to believe.
Right.
But again,
is that accurate, Dave?
Yeah, Dave, I'll have to ask you if that's accurate. But again, the whole reason that I stopped going down that road is because everybody will always bring it back to, no, but if you look at it this way and you draw it at this rate and you realize that then you're kind of like, okay, well, yeah, if you look at it that way, and it's the same way as the three guys in a hotel, Bob. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it in one way, then sure. But this is the whole problem with the curve calculator, is that we don't see curvature. So I'm able to just drop the curve calculator. I can beg the question. I can say, well, what size hump would there be looking from point A to point B, just like we did at the Salton Sea? I mean, we're able to see 38 miles. It'd be impossible on any kind of curve Earth where there's an obstruction. So I don't even need to really go down that line anymore. But I can see why somebody would, and I just feel like, yeah, even no matter what we come up with here, people will always take it back to the 8 inches per mile squared and say no. But look at this is what AutoCAD draws up. This is what AutoCAD shows.
Okay. I can point out where we've been going wrong with AutoCAD. I'll get to that in a minute.
Good.
I think I understand.
That, yeah.
I understand where we've gone wrong with that. But you see, this is why it matters to me, and that is that if it's right, I don't mind if it's 0.3, 0.6. For every meter you lose 0.3 of a meter in height. It would mean that our observations actually would be much further. We would be able to see far, far further, because if you can take yourself up onto a mountain, and you imagine when you're at the highest point of the mountain, your view down into the valleys and so on is very, very far. Once your horizon is lower below your feet, but it is very, very far out into the distance. And so if we lived on a ball as steep as, or if we lived on a ball and we were tiny little things living on that ball, then the world would be very steep around us. And you'd have no need for laser experiments. You would have no need for any sorts of tests to try and discern whether there was 8 inches or 24 inches or whatever in the distance. You would have no need for that, because everything would be falling off around you, because you're always at the 12 o'clock position. You're always on the top. That's relativity. That's their model. Right? And where they haven't given up, when we've thought about the 8 inches per mile squared, we've done a couple of things that don't bear this same reality. One is we take the ship, or whatever it is that's traveling away from the observer, and we slide it down the side of the ball, and we draw a horizontal line to map the fall away from the ball. Now, first thing is that the ship should actually be at the 12 o'clock position, or whatever's being observed. This is one of the conundrums of the ball model that doesn't make sense, because if not, then the ship is going to no longer be at the horizontal. It's going to have taken a much steeper angle. And unfortunately, I don't have my camera. I'll try and get my camera going, but I'd rather get this idea across.
Yeah.
And that is that
if it's not 12 o'clock, then it should be bending in one way or another.
Well, of course, and because by the time it gets to the 3 o'clock position, then it's gone through a 90-degree arc shift. So the ship is now pointing downwards. But whenever we do our trigonometry, we just use a horizontal line and measure the horizontal line and account for the angular change in the vehicle or the globe, which should be rolling backwards beneath the ship, so as it stays in the 12 o'clock position. So I think that's one of the first tricks. And the other trick that they do, and I'll see if I can turn my camera on and show you this. But this is okay. This is a clock, obviously, and the second hand is what I want you to pay attention to. Now, I've intentionally laid.
Hold on 1 second. I want to make sure I'm not seeing it yet. Hold on. Why can't I switch to? Hold on, I'm trying to bring up your camera. Bob, stop sharing. Maybe I don't know why I can't bring up his picture. I'm trying to click on it. Nothing's happening here. Weird. Okay, there we go. Now you're there.
Okay. So the second hand has just reached the top of the 12 o'clock position, and it's now traveling. You'll notice it's moving exactly the same amount from second to second. Seem to have lost my image here, unfortunately. Can you still see my screen?
The second hand's at the 4. Yeah.
Okay. So you see, typically what we do is we hold it up like this, and we notice how much when the second hand gets towards the 3, it's moving down quite rapidly by comparison to here, which is why for the first 1,000 miles in the 8 inches per mile squared, we're happy that it only drops down 140 or 150 miles of the 4,000 mile trajectory towards 3 o'clock, or the downward movement towards the 3 o'clock position. And I think that this is one of the tricks that's been played on us. So what I've done is I've said, well, if we lay the wheel on its side and we do the journey, we take the ship around like this, then we no longer have to think about how much it's dropping from a relative 12 o'clock position. It is always moving like the second hand equally around. But as I've got the camera running, look here, guys. This is my Earth water ball. This is obviously how you get a globe and of water, put it in a balloon, it needs to be contained. But you'll notice that the ship which obviously would be thousands of miles long because it's so big on this balloon, is actually not in line with or not following the shape of the thing that it's on. You see, so all of that movement, when we use trigonometry and we put a horizontal line onto a sphere, we create an unnatural state. And from that unnatural state, we all know that this bit here is very small. This gap here is very small. And then, yes, if you extend this line out, then the gap gets larger and larger and larger. And that's what we've used as our 8 inches per mile squared, because eventually it does sort of catch up. I mean, as you pointed out, Bob, it's not quite right. The maths isn't quite right. But this bucket I've got here, this wheel I've got in a bowl of water, you'll notice that the wheel and the water follow a very different line than the table. But when you put the line, when they ask you to put a line on top of your circle on a piece of paper, what they're doing is we're using planar geometry, because we live on a planar world. It's that they've used that planar trickery to say, well, this is the amount that you're going to curve away from the point of the observer. Now I'm going to take you into my lounge and show you guys something really amazing. Just bear with me a second. This is my lounge. At the moment I'm staying in a this is a barn, a saddle room for a like a Christian retreat, and they gave us accommodation for a month in return for some work. But I've been lying here at the fireplace and looking for the solution to where they've tricked us, and I'm about to show it to you, my friends. This half semicircle here, and you can see that, I hope. Mm-hmm. This semicircle here is what is our globe, or our top half of our globe. And we all would understand that this would be like the spokes of the wheel going out. And as Jaron said, if you had to take 25,000 of these spokes, little spokes from a center, and mark them each round the wheel, then each of those would represent the amount of curvature or globe blocking that would be in the way. And that would be how I would recommend doing it. But if I draw your attention to the timber just above here, you'll notice that the timber is almost straight. This timber here is straight, but this one here, they have had to cut it more of a curve. This one, they've had to cut more of a curve. And by the time you get here, this timber here has been cut at such a steep angle to account for its position. But what's its position? Well, its position is vertical to the sphere, and it's created an unnatural means of measurement. And I think that's why all the AutoCAD things, they work just fine. But that's because they're using this line here. They're creating an artificial horizon which shouldn't exist on the globe. There should be no horizontal square line. And then they're dropping down from that to create this, yes, where you live, where you happen to be is a bit of a flat spot, but all the way here, 40 or 90 degrees away from you, things are dropping off radically fast. Rather than actually, the experience of the ship should be to just simply follow this line all the way around, never accounting for any increased gradient or any increase in the amount of curvature. And I think that is, without being able to, obviously to go back and then recalibrate the maths using this method rather than the trigonometry, which pulls you away from the sphere and turns it into a square box from which you draw all your measurements. So that was my kind of what I thought was my most useful kind of sort of contribution to the conversation, was to say that if you're on a sphere, there's never a point at which that sphere has got anything other than the same amount of curvature. But what they've done cleverly is they've basically squashed the ball onto a tabletop, flipped it upside down and said, right, now measure the amount that the object is going to curve as it goes away from you. And I think that, my friends, is where the trick has been played. Because the second hand is always moving at exactly the identical amount. And if there were 25,000 sort of, movements of the second hand, then we would be able to see exactly how much each moved. And it would be simply, well, as you've possibly done, Jaron, is to say, well, what is the radius 4,000 miles? What is the distance from the 12 o'clock position to the 6 o'clock position? That's 12,000 miles. And divide those two, and you get this figure of 0.3, where I've gone, well, it's 8,000 miles of drop. But I think you might be right. And I used the 12,000 over 8,000 miles of drop and said, well, that should be, if you divide the amount that I've got to fall, that my angle has got to change, into the distance of the journey, I think of it like climbing down a mountain. The mountain is 1,200 meters high, 800 meters high, and the journey from the top of the mountain to the sea level is 1,200 or whatever. It's 12 times that. So it's 12,000 meters down the slope, but I'm going to lose 8,000 meters in height. That's as simple as it should be. That, in terms of, from my sort of simple way of looking at the maths, is how it should be. And I guess why it matters is, one, because it's, once you realize that, it so obviously cannot be the reality that we see around us. It cannot. That reality is not sustainable by what you see. The 8 inches in the mile squared, people can be excused for trying to kind of excuse that away, or superior mirage that kind of thing away. But when it's no, the case should be that you're standing basically on Everest and looking down at the world around you, assuming you get to be on top, like every Einsteinian relativist thinks. They get to be on top, and they're looking down at things, a valley, just stretching, tens of miles into the distance. That would be what you would actually see. And so, one, we shouldn't be waiting. They're laughing at us again if we're doing laser tests to find this 8 inches squared, when in fact it should be like an Olympic swimming pool has 30 meters of curvature in it. That's, or you're using your math, it should have about 15 meters of curvature in it, or hump. It should have such a visible hump, just an Olympic swimming pool, just your own home swimming pool. Even your jacuzzi should have, an amount of curvature in it. It's such a crazy number. That if we can get people to look at the maths and look at it from a different perspective, firstly, that the viewer has got no bearing on the nature of the shape. Their perspective may cause it to look different, but in fact, the amount that the ship or the island is going to curve away at 10 miles or 100 miles is going to be a fixed amount, regardless of where I stand. My ability to see that will be determined by where I'm standing. Right. And that's the first part. And the second part is, of course, we are propagating on behalf of the system and having arguments with people on behalf of the system a model that is even, it is 1,000 times, less realistic, obviously, this idea that it could be
exactly, Dave. That's the whole thing, right? I mean, by us using the 8 inches per mile squared, we're kind of doing the ballers a favor, right? Because, if you look at it in this alternate paradigm, the curvature is way more severe, right? And they can't even come up to show anything resembling an 8 inches per mile squared curvature as it is. And in fact, a lot of that, was taken from the human eye specifications, right? So they can't even show that amount of curvature, and there's no hope, obviously, of looking at anything even more severe than that. So, 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Ultimately, it really doesn't matter. Why? Because there is no damn curvature, period, right?
Yeah. There's no curvature. There is no curvature. Obviously, there's no curvature. That will never go away. But to be able to say to someone, yeah, you see that ship that's like 3 miles away. Well, that should be, like 3 feet or something like that. That should be 3 feet below the curvature of the water. Well, people stand on the beach all day long and argue with you that 3 feet has gone away. And even when you pull out the P900, they would still find some excuse in their mind. But if you had to say to them, well, at 3 miles away, that ship should already be 1 mile below the curvature of the water, or there or thereabouts, it's game over. There is no conversation to be had. You see how they've used what we see in the world around us to continue to obfuscate the truth about the insanity of a living on a ball.
Absolutely, Dave. But I have to make this comment though, that we understand where you're going with this, because obviously we've contemplated this before. But in terms of just trying to be effective, to try and get the message out to people, we can't really try and reinvent mathematics for them. Right now, standard trigonometry says essentially that it's 8 inches per mile squared, no matter whether you're going to look at it under that paradigm or the Sagitta or the AutoCAD paradigm or whatever. And that in and of itself, I think, is enough, and it's done under the existing mathematical paradigm to convince people. But and then if they're already on board, then you can kind of take them to this other paradigm of looking at it, the way we've just looked at it, and say, look, it even gets even more absurd there. But by that time, you've already got them on board, essentially, right? Using the standard trigonometry model.
Yes, no, I accept that. But it's just, for me, like, it has, what they've done is they've created this kind of, what you already said, this version of maths that has us thinking that it might be a possibility that there's a certain amount, when, of course, well, this is, because Jaron, what Jaron was saying is like where he was at, was that, if you've got, 25,000 people sitting on a barge 1 mile apart, what are they going to report back is happening with the ship as it comes past them? Well, they would always say it was the same amount of curvature as the person before. And that you would expect, actually, because on a sphere, it should be the same amount of curvature from mile to mile to mile to mile. And so while we're proponing this incrementally increasing, rapidly getting steeper and steeper as it gets away from you version of maths, I can see why some of the disagreements, why some of the people I've failed to convince have been hard to convince, because for me the maths of, now that I think about it from this perspective, the maths of an incrementally increasing model, which ends up creating a parabola from the perspective of the viewer. If you look around 360 degrees all around you, you've got 8 inches, 24, 32, 66 feet by 10 miles, and then obviously hundreds and hundreds of feet by 100 miles. So it's a parabola in essence, almost like a sine wave. And I can think of many people, smart people, who've gone, that's not going to be how it works.
Right.
It's got to be the same amount of curve per step.
Exactly, David. And one other thing that I want to point out too is that the Globers have also done something else to throw an additional level of obfuscation in this. And shout out to Leah Templar for bringing us up. She says 1 degree around a globe equates to 1 degree difference between areas 69 miles apart. So now what they've done is they've introduced this 1 degree of and you can't really call it curvature. You can call it angle change, I suppose, but it still has a z-axis component to it, right? But that's something else that they will bring it back to kind of obfuscate the whole issue. It's kind of like oh geez, what was I'm sorry, my phone rang and I just completely lost my train of thought. But anyway, it's just another obfuscation technique. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Kind of like when Wolfie 6020 was talking about how slow your nose would be going down, right? Or how slow you would be traveling when he's talking about, well, if you're at the center of a clock, right? And the clock is going around once every 24 hours. And he said you'd never be able to notice that. But of course, what he failed to point out, and this is the obfuscation, is that when you get to the end of that moment, that arm right out there, what's happening is that motion has now increased to 1,037.5 miles per hour. And that's something you absolutely would notice, right? So, they always try and obfuscate with these matters of scale. One other thing that I was saying on Globebusters a couple weeks ago is they will try and tell you, well, you should never see the curvature because they will put it in contrast to the entire 8,000 mile diameter essentially to the Earth, right? And then they'll say, whoa, when you look at 120,000 feet or even the ISS at 250 miles up, with respect to the entire 8,000 mile diameter of the Earth, well, then you get a 0.00, some ridiculously small number. And then they say you'd never notice it that way. But again, we kind of broke through that by understanding that, no, we're actually looking at it in contrast to the surface, one surface reference point to another. And that's kind of what you're doing here. So, I mean, the obfuscation techniques are endless with these guys. There's no two ways about it.
And the ability, you see, because the globe is actually just a model in all of our minds. There's nothing real about it other than people's little toys that they have on their desk. But so because it's all a construct of the mind, what they've cleverly done is they've used what we've all seen in the world around us to construct a mathematical model that could be real or could be believable. Now, for me, the last few weeks, I've really had to try and reverse myself out of that kind of 8-inch mindset or that 8-inch model that I had in my mind, which created this sort of flat area near me and then an increasingly steep area as things moved away from me, and try to zoom myself out and be on this radius of 4,000 miles and to imagine being on a radius and a diameter of 8,000 miles, a radius of 4,000 miles, being that clock hand sweeping, at the end of the 4,000 mile arc, and the amount of bend, the amount of curve is actually insane. It's so incredible that where we've got this idea that the ball is so big, we can't really see curvature. The ball is so bending. And all balls bend by all spheres are sort of bending at the same mathematical formula, in fact, that it would be immediately obvious to you that you were precariously placed on a bending surface. You see the pixel that you were standing on, the 1 square meter pixel that you were standing on, you might argue had almost no observable curve to it. But the next pixel on would already be curving down from you. Because when you think of yourself as a soccer ball, you Americans say, the football, if you think of yourself as that, you're actually the paint on the ball. And you're inside, as Neil deGrasse Tyson says, you're actually inside the ball when you're that close, when we're this close to the Earth. So you're actually part of the fabric of the ball itself. And the fabric of the ball itself is constantly bending. You might argue that 1 pixel, 1 fleck of paint or whatever is a square unit standing on the ball, but the very next fleck of paint is bent away and obviously bent away. And so for the next meter, the next 10 meters, and the next 100 meters, you would immediately be seeing the falling away from you. If as we see it, if the Geran mass at 0.3 or the mass that you and I were thinking of at 0.6 odd, you would immediately be standing on a place around you that was ball-like. It wouldn't be, there's a plateau here for a few miles and then it starts. No, none of that. And so that's where it's about, because it's all in the imagination, it is about reimagining the nature of a sphere like that. And all we've done with the 8 inches is take a belief system, because none of us had a measurement. None of us had a formula before we got into flat Earth. So we've taken that and sort of cleverly crafted that around what we see and said, okay, I can see how that would work.
Yeah, exactly. One other thing that I wanted to point out, just going back just a little bit, Dave, because TJ in the chat, one of our former Globebusters, mentioned that one of the problems with the going a mile and it's 8 inches and then going another mile at 8 inches. Essentially what you're describing there is a slope, right? Not a parabola. And, obviously there's all kinds of problems with that when you look at it that way. That's why, going back, that 8 inches per mile is a generalized figure, because it actually kind of has a positive and negative swing to those numbers, as we saw, as the chart demonstrated. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Continue on.
No, that's okay. I mean, I dealt with the 8 inches. The reason why my first friend that I lost through flat Earth was a smart guy named Aaron, and he and I argued on 3 or 4 occasions over the formula, and then our friendship came to an end. And he was saying it has to be the same amount each mile, and I was saying, but of course it can't be 8 inches, because 8 inches would be the most gentle of slopes. And that would never, per mile, it would never go anywhere. So I'm totally aware of that, and that was partly why I bought into the miles squared. Because yes, after 4,000 miles, 6,000 miles or 5,000 miles, you've kind of gone off the edge, and you're at the 3 o'clock position. I kind of saw all of that, and it's like, yep, okay, I kind of get that. And of course, following the horizontal line from the top of the ball down, then yes, I bought into those distances, and the trigonometry and the maths can be verified, and very smart guys who really want the truth to be out there have verified the math. But what I'm saying is that the mistake we've made is we based it on a horizontal, which doesn't exist. You see, the ship, the paint fleck, the person, whatever, it is always following the natural curve or the arc of the second hand or the clock or the or the sphere. It is always doing that. It doesn't get the luxury of stepping off the ball for a moment, becoming a flat line, zeroing everything, and then starting to measure against some fictional or some non-existing horizontal line, which of course would never be the trajectory of your second hand. Your second hand would just simply arc around the clock, moving a single amount each time, putting the same amount of arc curve or circle curve between it and the previous second. That's all it is. And it's so simple when you think of it in those sort of terms, that it's like, okay, so how do we bring about a math that explains that for a 4,000 mile radius? I'm open to, because this is where I go with the conversation, is bring people in who would say, yeah, this is the maths, and this is how we can verify that way of thinking, and removing the artificial horizon, because this is one of the weird things, is that the ball believers want to say that there is no level horizon, that it's actually all bending. But when they give you the maths, they give you a horizontal line, they give you a firm fixed line, and say work everything off of that. And it's like, no, that's not how the clock is formulated. That's not how the globe should be formulated.
Yeah, I think probably, and this is where we kind of left this off. I mean, Jaron and I, we talked about this, and I think that probably one of the best ways to describe it would be to put it in terms of a ratio, right? Instead of hard numbers, because, when you have a ratio, that will essentially give you a constant value.
That's why I came up with the 0.318, really. Because the 0.318 allowed me to talk about it on a 25,000 mile ball, but then also I could break that down and say it's a 25,000 foot ball. Then I could break it down and say it's a 25,000 inches circumference ball. And no matter what number I use, the ratio still becomes 0.318. You could take any traveled distance, divide it by 0.318, and get basically the Sagitta, or if you're talking about half a sphere. And I could draw the circle again if people want to see it, but I've shown it many times. That if you draw a complete circle and you're talking about somebody starting at 12 o'clock and ending at 6 o'clock, that person, if they traveled straight from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock, straight down the middle through the core of the Earth, if you want to say that, they traveled 8,000 miles, right, or 7,915. Right.
Jaron, you actually should draw it, because a lot of people haven't seen this. It's been years since we covered it.
Okay, I'll bring it up. Let me get my paint program open. And it's really simple, and I mean, people always said, no matter what I showed, oh, you're doing it wrong, you don't understand math, why are you doing math? But I'll just show you how easy it was for me to come up with this number.
And the whole thing is the math, just like Dave and all of us went through, what the math does, and, pardon the pun, but it's taking us around in circles, right? It'll make you crazy because you're going around in circles trying to figure this thing out.
Right. And a bunch of my subscribers, a few of my subscribers have said, I'm losing God on this one, but we have got good maths, and I think that people have just gone along with a version of maths that kind of helps to paint the reality that we see around us. But
let me see.
It doesn't.
Tell me if you see a black screen here. Anybody? I don't know.
Can you see
that, Bob?
Yeah, I can see it. If I may say something, what I think about what's the problem with these calculations, the curvature calculation itself, is that what you have is this section of the ball, which is on horizontal. It's just basically a section. It's not a sphere. And it's not taking the observer into consideration. So the calculation that whatever calculation should be, it should be from the whatever observer and many different vectors, right? Because if you're looking in one direction, there's also other directions that are coming into your vision. So you need to account for what's happening degree by degree of your angle of vision, your full angle of vision, and the differences between what you should expect, which you can model, I guess, on a sphere. But it's different than the section that we get, this 2D diagram, then, you measuring, the degree of curvature in a circle. And that kind of observation can only be the straight line observation, when what you actually see is not in a straight line. You see things coming from all around you, as far as your peripheral vision goes. So, yeah.
Well, a little part of the trick is that it's also we've been trying to measure the height lost against some notional center or some notional bottom, when in fact the clock isn't at all concerned by that. The second hand isn't at all concerned by that. It is simply following a line around the sphere, and all these square lines and triangles and so on. Well, they don't really account for that. But let's see what how this plays out.
Okay, so I mean, this takes into effect kind of what you were talking about, right? A circle equals, and I got to pull out my keyboard, and you're not going to be able to hear my mic. There we go. Hold on. A circle equals constant curve, right? Sorry, equals.
Yes. Continuous, always the same.
Right. Okay.
Curvature rate.
So taking that into account, and then we just talk about, and let's say this is a sphere Earth, and we can break it down to different numbers after. But if somebody traveled from top to bottom, so they basically went from here to here through the center of the Earth, let's just say, then we know that is 7915, let's say, right? That's how many miles they would travel straight through. But in order to get there on a sphere Earth, they're going to have to travel around the bend. They have to go around the curve. Well, what is the distance of this curve would be, so we know straight down is 7915, and to get around the entire thing would be 12,500, right? So then if you asked yourself, well, what amount of curve did they have to climb? Well, since they could go straight through for about 7915, but they have to climb this curve, well, this line here, which we know is the radius, is what they have to climb. So we know that the radius is 3959. So where this works out well is because now if you take the math of 0.318, you can just take the calculator, and let's say, I don't know if you can see the calculator on the screen. I'm doing it, but you might not see that.
Yeah.
But can you see the calculator? Probably not. You can?
Yep.
Okay, good. So if we, you guys can, but I don't think people at home can. That's the problem. But anyway, so if we take that journey of 12,500 miles and you divide that by 0.318, then you're going to get exactly what this climb, times it. What did I do? 25,000 miles. I'm sorry, not 25,000. 12,500 times 0.318. Because if that's the curvature per mile, then the climb is this, the 3975. And it's not exactly because I'm taking round numbers like this when actually it would be less than that. It'd be 24,901 divided by 2. But and then if you took this line, so let's say the person starts here and walks here. Well, how far did they go? In that case, they went 6,250 miles. And how much did they climb? Well, again, you would just need to do the calculation on that. You could take 6,250 miles times...
It's actually 6225,
okay,
but whatever.
Yeah, times 0.318. And I'm just doing round numbers here. And then this number would be 1987. Because that's the amount of climb that they had to do when this is the straight line, and then they have to travel here. So really it's just, and then you could take that whole number, right? Because if you then looked at this, back all this out, because you could just double it. If the person has to travel all the way around, and again, that's what I mean by if you did 25,000 inches. Let's say this particular circle is only 25,000 inches in circumference, and you could still do the same thing. You could multiply that 25,000 or 24,901 whatever times,
because you're dealing with a ratio,
right, times 0.318.
Yep.
The ratio is going to be the same. It's going to come out to 7918, which is the diameter. Now, why is it the diameter in this case? Because we went all the way around. But if you cut that in half and say, okay, now the person's just traveling 12,500 inches, then you can still multiply it by 0.318, and then you're going to get this distance, which is going to be 39,
the radius,
59, the radius. Yeah. So that's all I was saying is that, and that makes more sense to me, but then the curvature would be 0.318 miles per mile. Now, everybody says, oh, you can't chop it up, but like I kept saying, and again, I've said this a million times, but if you had 25,000 people around the Earth like this, each one, and you asked each person to measure in between them, wouldn't it be, according to their math, 8 inches of each mile? And they say, oh, but you got to square it. I'm saying, well, still, between each person, there has to be a certain amount of curvature that adds up over the whole thing. Now, to them, that 8 inches, if you took 8 inches and timed it by 25,000, then the whole curvature of the Earth, 25,000 miles, comes out to 3 miles, a little over 3 miles. Yeah. Which doesn't seem right. So that makes sense.
And it's a slope.
Right, and it would be a slope.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think I like your thinking on this, Jaron. But when you were pointing out when you did the right angle to the 3 o'clock position, and you said, okay, that journey from the 12 o'clock to the 3 o'clock is 6,200 odd miles.
Right.
And the height that I need to height is not a great word to use, but the amount that I'm going to lift from that 12 o'clock position to the 3 o'clock position, if we're using their maths, is 4,000 miles. So thereabouts. So that was my kind of maths on that, was to say, well, if it's 4,000 miles of a change in height and a 6,000 mile journey, what is the formula that would require for that? And it would be the same. Like you would use the same formula, just really the only variation.
They use this one, right? They use this one out and then the drop.
They use that one,
right?
But imagine now you've got a line pointing from your spindle to your 3 o'clock position. If you could draw that in, so yeah, and then you got a line out from the middle of the clock to the 3 o'clock position.
Here?
To complete the triangle.
The center point to the 3 o'clock position.
Oh, got you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
Yep. That's it. So now if you took the journey from the 12 o'clock over the skin to the 3 o'clock, we know that that's going to be a 4,000 mile journey. Sorry, a 4,000 mile rise, or a 4,000 mile drop, rather, and a 6,000 mile journey. Now, if you got to the 3 o'clock position,
hold on a second. Wouldn't it be better to look at it as, say, this person could walk through the Earth here to get there, but since you can't do that and you have to travel along the surface, then really the only amount that they're climbing is this. They're not going over any. That's why I said when you go from here to here, that the amount of curve that you have to climb is this. Sorry, my little lines are off a little bit. The amount you have to climb is the height of this. Just like if you're going from 12 to 3, the amount that you have to climb is this. That's the hump. And if we're talking about, a shorter line here, the amount that you have to climb is here. Mm-hmm. But you can always figure out what that amount is, I think, by timesing it by 0.318. You're going to always get the answer. And if you go around the circle, then the answer is going to be this. Mm. But anyway, go ahead back to what you were saying, because so where I lost you is you said if we travel from here to here, which is 6,250 miles, you think that the amount that they're going up is this amount?
Would it? I mean, because obviously there is no up and down in a spherical model. Everything is relative. Hey? So it gets a little bit kind of untidy in the mind. But if we had to roll the 3 o'clock to the 12 o'clock position, say,
right.
I mean, it makes no real difference. But if you had to do that, would you not think that you were descending 4,000 in order? Because to get to the bottom of the globe, if you go from North Pole to South Pole, we know, as you say, it's about 8,000 miles if you drop through with your feet.
Mm-hmm.
So So are we not changing? Are you saying all we're changing is the 4,000 miles? We've got to sort of crest the 4,000 miles up, and then that accounts for the down part as well.
Yeah, I mean, just because to me that's what the amount is off of the curve. So, I mean, and again, I could be looking at this wrong, but if a person's going, like you said, 8,000 miles here, but they have to travel, they're forced, there is no way to go straight through the Earth. You have to travel along the surface. So to get 8,000 miles here, you have to travel 12,500 miles. And how much did you have to deviate from your straight path? Well, you had to climb the radius. So to me, in 12,500 mile journey, you're making a 4,000 mile rise. So same thing would be true here. 12 to 3 in traveling, you can't do this straight line here. So you'd have to travel along the surface, in which case you have to climb that amount. So I guess where I'm confused is...
Right. I guess they would just say that as you travel, you be corrected.
Correct. Like that's what
to
he
the
said,
center.
Right? He's saying I would have to keep rotating the ball. Keep rotating. If
rotating
we're 12 to 3. Yeah, and this is where I just, it's... I think it comes down to the 3 men in a hotel. It's which way you feel like looking at it. And I know I even showed this to Kurt, and Kurt still saw it another way. So I understand that not everybody sees it this way. It was just really easy to figure out. And then from the 0.318, I just realized how weird it was that all of a sudden you could figure out, because in my remembering of school and circles, they had all these crazy, 2 times 2 pi r, all those numbers to get different aspects of a circle. But I never understood, why didn't anybody just teach me 0.318? If I have the circumference, if I know that this is a 25,000 mile circle, then you can just take 25,000 mile circle times 0.318, and that equals the diameter. So why, when I look for any videos on YouTube or anything of how to find a diameter, if I know the circumference, the last thing I'll ever see is anybody mention 0.318. They send you through... Now, again, that could just be the way that they feel like teaching children. They want them to understand why it's 0.318, so they take it through 2 pi r, and you have to... But really, why wouldn't 0.318 be just taught as a simple way? Because you can really use it to figure out radius, and you can even figure out if you know half the circumference, and you can figure out the... if this is a 25,000 mile ball in the same way, then you can take 12,500 times that by 0.318, and now you have your radius. So that's the only reason I thought it was interesting, is I said, okay, well, if this number, this ratio is certainly a ratio that pertains to circles, why is it not taught? Now, the other thing is, isn't the reciprocal of... Now I can't remember. The reciprocal of pi... So how do you get a reciprocal? 1 divided by the
1
number?
over. Yeah, 1 over.
So 1 over 3.14 equals 0.318.
Yep.
So that's the other thing. Now, doesn't that sound interesting that it has to do, it's the reciprocal of pi. Pi is the relationship of the diameter to the circle. And 0.318 can also be, and I think... I mean, this is what I was saying before, and people said I was crazy. I said, well, the reason they don't teach 0.318 is because really 0.318 per mile is the deviation from straight. It's what makes a circle a circle. A circle is not a straight line because it has deviation off the straight line. And 0.318 could be the amount of curve. Now, of course, they'll never say that, and even when I think that, I'm like, is that really what the curve would be per mile? But 0.318 miles per mile, all of a sudden, I mean, what's 0.318 times, so 0.318 times, there's 5,280 feet, right? So that's, 1,679 feet per mile. That's insanity.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's why, that's why immediately it kills the flow. And so to help people think about this, I think I've been trying to think, how have I got it wrong? And I think that what you've got to do is actually, if you were the ship, you've got to imagine the ship following the inside of your blue line, just sitting on the inside of your blue line. There's no good reason to take a square box and put that around that and then say, now measure the rate of change, because that rate of change, yes, is extreme at the 9 o'clock and the 3 o'clock and the 12 o'clock. depending on your perspective on that. So that's why I'm so keen on trying to clarify this, because if it's clarified, then all of those boys making so much noise about 7.98, Mick West and all that stuff. Simon Dan, I invited him for a little one-on-one for face-to-face meeting in his hometown. He refused to meet with me. But can you imagine if we had to say to them, yes, for every kilometer, you should lose 300 meters. 300 meters in a kilometer. You would immediately be looking down a hill. You would immediately know that you were on a globe, living on a globe. And that's obviously not where we live. So that's why it matters, because 8 inches, there's some, thumb sucking and debating about that. But 1,600 inches, 1,600 feet in a mile, get out of here. There's no way.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, Dave. I mean, this is something that it is so ambiguous. And again, it all depends on how you come at it. It all depends on how you look at it.
Right.
And there's a million different ways to look at it. And that's why, Jaron and I kind of gave up on it and said, okay, you know what? Let's just stick with 8 inches per mile, because that's the mainstream, and they can't even come close to showing that curvature anyway.
Even that can be disproven and shown to be, inerrant, or with error.
Yeah.
So
yeah. But of course, there's a 1,000 trolls lining up to say no, it's still there. But let one of them come and tell me that my 100-meter racetrack for the Olympic final has got 30 meters of curvature, or a 15-meter hump in the middle, or however you want to calculate it, unless they do some construction work to level that thing off. But that's how much curvature there should be on their mats if we apply it properly. So I really dislike how much my life and my reality has been shaped for me by some kind of dark force, and it is in our lifetime and in our remit to shine a light on this. And I know you guys have been doing fantastic work. I've been obviously getting out in the street and saying certain things to people, but I only want to say the things that I can really, hang my hat on. And I have to hang my head in shame and say, I really can't see how the 8 inches works at all. And then once you throw the 8 inches per mile squared out the window and you start looking around for new things, you come up with this number that Jaron's got, or where I was at. But I'm more comfortable with Jaron's number, I have to say. But even so, it's so insane.
I don't want anybody to get any comfortability with that number until many more people look into it, because there's people I totally respect, like Curious Life, who didn't agree with it. So there's a lot of people, and I just feel sometimes that we're taught a certain way of math, and so anybody doing math outside that paradigm gets laughed at and told that's not the way it works. Whereas to me, it works. If I can take 0.318 and multiply it by any amount of distance and always get that same ratio, then it tells me that there's something to do with that ratio. And you can even take okay, if I travel 1 mile and multiply that by 0.318, you get the 0.318. That's how many miles of curvature you went on that particular. And again, it doesn't matter if we're using miles or inches or centimeters or meters, or it's a ratio, like Bob said. Right. But again, I can understand where people will always come back and say, no, that's not the way. You can't take curvature in slice segments of a pie. You can't. And again, I understand why.
But, I think that.
Not to disrespect anyone. The truth is that our best doctors, our best scientists, they all were given a version of reality, the atom bomb, the nucleus, and all these sorts of things. And when we told them that these things were possibly not real, they said, "You're just not smart enough to understand."
Of course.
And so, therefore, it is absolutely likely that our mathematicians, as smart as they are, they've been given a form of mathemagics which has been designed from the outset, like so many of these things, to mislead us. And so, therefore, it is with respect that I say that some of the best educated mathematicians are likely to have to kind of go, shit, maybe we've also been kind of given a form of magic that is misleading. So it's hard. And that's why it's a simple guy like me that's going to say, no, this doesn't work. They don't like it, but, we've all been bamboozled. So
they hate it.
No ego.
Yeah. I agree with this, and one of the things that find it quite telling in this whole discussion. Like when you talk about it, Jaren, like the how it works on geometry, right? What you're talking about is abstract geometry, right? We're talking about it's how math works. It's abstract and things round out and right. So, but it doesn't fit, like we're saying. Of course, we agree it doesn't fit our reality. It doesn't describe the world. And then, sorry, we do have the science. All we've been learning about perspective, optics, refraction, things actually fit observation, right? That should be taught. All the work that's been done on perspective.
That's the scary thing. That's where I start seeing that these things that we bring up, and it's kind of like going back to Taboo Conspiracy's little section he did of Globebusters, where he was talking about some of the things that flat earthers have brought up, and there's a lot of these things that were left out, like perspective. The video I did with
Life is Short.
Life is Short, when he talked about the laws of halves and doubles.
Right. And that we don't see in orthogonal views, right?
Right.
Exactly.
None of that was ever taught to me in school.
Absurd.
That was my point from the beginning. We have to calculate if you're gonna if you have to factor in the curve of the ball into perspective, you change the whole study of perspective, because it's not meant for that. It's meant for flat.
Absolutely, and that's Nathan Oakley has had his little pet name for the curve calculator forever, and he's right. I mean, it is a perspective hijacking, begging the question, proof of nothing. I just want to say thank you to the super chats. Free Flow said, "Jaren, awesome job." Witsit Gets It. Austin, are you here? I see you. I don't know.
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Austin, welcome to the show. 2 hours and a half into it. Thank you. Conflect is send a super chat. Thank you, by the way, Austin, for the super chat. No one's having more fun than us. Hey, appreciate that. And the Question Everything conference channel says, keep up the great work. And I am Lone Frog. Thank you so much for that super chat. He says, I do so love this chat. I do love everybody here. Thank you so much for being here. Austin, anything new? What do you think about what we've been talking about? How do you see this 8 inches per mile squared?
The way I see it is your ratio, in my opinion, seems to be more efficient. But of course, they're not going to like that. But just like Bob and everyone's saying, even with 8 inches per mile squared, they can't substantiate curvature. So, and also, like you were saying, it doesn't really matter what we show. They're always going to say, well, it's just bending all the way around the ball or whatever. So,
right. No, I totally agree with that. I just think that's why I kind of got away from it. I was like, okay, I'm certainly not going to – you can't argue math with these people. That's something they certainly will not allow. And I do think that they've reverse engineered optics. I think Travis from Life is Short has proven that we just see things drop off because that's the way light works. And over a certain amount of distance, you're going to lose what you're seeing. And I've described that all the time about being in a foggy area. That number becomes much smaller. And in a heavy atmosphere, or if it's a summer day, I can see far shorter than I can when it's cool and crisp and it's a winter day. Then I can see the mountains off in the distance. But no matter what, when I look at the area around me, it always looks circular. So I could always draw the conclusion that I'm living on a globe, even if I can't see the mountains over there and I can't see it's a warm day and I can only see 3 miles and the atmosphere gets really hazy and full at that point. It still looks like a circle to me, right? And that's very easy for them to draw up this idea from there, because as things get more clear, as the weather gets cooler and I can see further, all of a sudden it still looks circular to me. Why? Well, because just like we drew in that circle, my eyes are the radius of that circle. No matter where I look, I only can see in a circle distance around me. So it's very easy for them to hijack perspective. We don't see curvature, and so it doesn't matter to me really what the curve calcs say. We always err in the side of the glober, right? We always try and give them some leeway. Why? Because we're trying to show them how much evidence we actually have. Whereas they will steal everything they can and take every liberty they can in 7.6R and 9.6R and infinity over R. Whatever it takes for them to get what we observe, that's what they're ready to use. And once you see that, then you realize how the whole globe works. It doesn't matter what observations you make. They will simply take them and formulate them in a way that makes sense to them on a globe. That's what I've seen since I started doing this. So it doesn't surprise me. It may be fun to beg the question, but just perspective, huh? I missed.
And that's what they've done with the 8 inches per mile squared. Is they've said, it seems a little bit down around you, but where you can't see it becomes a ball. Just trust us.
Right. So couldn't that just be the way light works? Maybe light drops off at that amount.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly
Well,
seems.
like I said, I think if the maths stacks up as we're talking about, the reality is that the observer doesn't have any bearing on the nature of the ball, so it shouldn't get to reset from where the observer is standing. There should be the same amount of curvature everywhere, and that if it was like they say, the dimensions they say, then we would obviously be standing on a steep slope. Everywhere we looked around us would be a steep slope. So. I hope that more people can sort of weigh in on this. As I said, I've had a few friends contact me and say, there is definitely something to this. The maths, if you take it not from a planar sort of horizontal starting point at the 12 o'clock position, can be shown in a spherical way, I think. And for me, it's like 8 inches or 8,000 inches per mile. There's a huge difference, and everyone would be able to say the first mile, it's not there. There's the maths that should be a spherical math is not there to be seen on the evidence of the Earth around us, the world around us. So
one thing.
I hope more people pick up on it. And
I understand. I see the flaw in my calculations as well, because really when you think about 1,600 feet in a mile, that to me sounds insane. Now, so that's where I think, okay, something must be wrong here. Even though the calculations work out, even though the ratio works out, the idea of that seems preposterous. But then again, so does living on a ball, so do people standing upside down underneath me. It's just something I can't buy anymore.
Yeah, but those are the dimensions, and if you allow for the 8 inches per mile squared to get up to 2,000 and 3,000 miles away from you, then we're effectively saying that it's even steeper than that. You see, so the 8 inches per mile squared eventually gets to a 1 mile over and 1 mile. You're dropping basically like a stone at the 3 o'clock position, falling straight down.
Right.
That's using the 8 inches per mile model. So they allow for eventually your ship to be going down a very, very steep, from the observer perspective, a very, very steep decline. So no, I don't think you should think like that. I don't think that the 0.3 in 1 is the problem. The problem is that all of this is a construct of the mind, because in reality there are no balls that float and that people can walk on.
That's really well said. That's what goes back to what we said from the beginning, that it's all a construct. It's all entertainment. It's all metaphysical. The idea there's no up and down in space, but this globe Earth is pushing down into the fabric of space-time. Well, how is it pushing down? How does it know which direction to push if it's just a fabric of space-time? Whatever direction it pushes, if we call that down, it's the whole argument all over again. This is just mental gymnastics. And thank you again to the Super Chats. Clearly said TV controls the collective consciousness. Certainly is the best tool they've got. And then add social media to that, like we talked about earlier. And then Damon Mark said, will you guys do a show on buying P1000? What? Will you guys do a show on buying P1000? Yeah, we can talk about it. Bob has mine. I think he likes it. I don't know if it's his favorite thing. It's a little loud. It's a little clunky. But
it's heavy and big.
You're going to need to buy I don't know, what would you estimate? A $200, $300 tripod?
At least. I mean, the one the one that I had for the P900 was marginal, and the P1000 just weights it down. It's almost worthless.
Slowly over time, it'll just flop over forward.
Yeah.
And you want to be really careful.
Very heavy.
Mr.
Yeah.
Gadget.
Oh, hey. One thing I want to, just before we close this subject out, I just want to say, Dave, that in your activism, it would be my advice, don't try and change that going there. I would stick with the traditional equations because frankly, they're effective enough. And you don't want to try and reinvent the wheel when you're trying to get something else that's a completely different point across to people. So to me, it would be counterproductive to try and to A, not use the 8 inches per mile squared, and B, try and elaborate to somebody who you're already trying to get a foreign concept across to them. You see what I'm saying? So I would just let sleeping dogs lie and go with it, until we can come up with something more definitive.
Well, I mean, I'd have to beg to differ with you, my friend, because for me, I would rather say to someone, because actually trying to import the idea into to a lot of people that it's 8 inches per mile squared, and then at 10 miles it's 60 feet, and all of this sort of thing. It's no different to me to say to someone, well, the maths that I do, if we were on a wheel, says that we should lose X amount of visibility per mile, and I could say 300 meters, I could say 8 inches. It really, the 8 inches is like, okay, well, maybe I can still see it at 2-3 miles away. I'm not going to buy that. Obviously I'm flying a little bit on solo on this, and it's not like it's not the most important evidence, if you like, because we know that when we say, look, we live on a ball and the water should be curving, we can't measure any curvature. That's it. That's the basis for it all, isn't it? That the water doesn't bend, water's level, water's usual level, sea level, etc. So there's almost no need for a formula. But if it comes to it, this is why I think it matters, why it matters. The difference between 8 inches per mile squared and the 0.3 in a mile is because in the first mile it's game over. There is no curvature, and
True.
and
That's a good point.
and 8 inches is something that's bobbled over for 150 years.
Yeah, I just liken it to, if you're trying to, come up with too many points that are contrary. In other words, it's kind of like, a lot of people got all over Eric Dubé, right? Because he was saying, well, maybe Hitler wasn't such a bad guy, yada, yada, yada. And even though that may be true on some level, it's already hard enough, the point that you're trying to drive home about, hey, the earth is flat, without bringing in something else that's incredibly controversial. And what you're essentially doing is just that. You're saying, okay, well, now I'm going to question the accepted trigonometry for this. And that's, frankly, in my opinion, that's asking a little bit too much of people. But, like I said, you do activism your way.
Well,
I just see it a different way.
And it's good to talk about it if you can.
Sorry. Oh my God, sorry.
It's a problem.
Sorry,
it's good to talk about it in case you can prove it in a way that will get other people that are into math to wake up to it. Now, I don't think that'll happen. I certainly didn't see it happen with me. I just saw people rag on me about I don't understand math. I don't know how to do math. But again, maybe you can explain it in a way better than I can. Maybe you can show some proof of that function. I just could never do that. We did get a super chat from Mr. Gadget who says, R.A.P. Mad Mike, he accomplished more than y'all ever will. Wow, that's nice, Carlos. Thanks. I guess I need to...
I think, in my opinion, this is just what I think, there's a lot of concentration on how math... There's this idea that math is science somehow, which it isn't. Like, it is just abstract numbers. Is from the Arabic tradition. People can do maybe different calculations and equations with it, but it's not reality at all. And I think that it is a lot to ask from people to come up with an argument that instead of showing a bunch of evidence that we have from balloons and different kinds of things, all sorts of stuff, where you can actually match. I remember Ido has done some of this. What is the expected curvature when you have the balloon observation, how it doesn't match the observation. Some other things we've seen that studies on this, what is supposed curvature, than the math itself, if you know what I mean, because the math is so distracting, and it really, if you model the ball, for example, some of the most effective videos I think in the past were basically modeling a ball, simple 3D ball, and then having a balloon, rising, and that really helps you appreciate how much drop there should be there, better than an equation ever could, in my opinion, in terms of the visualizing of it. And just another point on the math magic thing and mathematicians, what I find very interesting is that I believe mathematicians themselves are very good people to go for to look at this stuff, because they understand that mathematics is manipulative. It is a symbol system. You can create things that don't exist with it. They have the Putnam.
Yeah, but they have such a heavy indoctrination. It's the same thing as saying Neil deGrasse Tyson would be the best person to look into the Earth curvature formula. It's not really the case, because he has such a heavy indoctrination, and these things have already been proven. It's just like, remember, Bob, you were going to have your math expert look at this whole curvature formula, and they basically said no, that if I remember right, didn't they basically come to the conclusion that no, the math that we've been given is correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exact. They didn't even want to look at it in a different way in terms of ratios or anything like that. So again, they do things the way they've been taught. That's their indoctrination. That's their regurgitation. That's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, what I was thinking, sorry, just to finish my point though, because what I was trying to say is that they in math, there are these famous competitions from things that have been invented that haven't been solved at all, which are mathematical inventions that they really want to solve. Whoever is able to solve some of these things is a monster mathematician. It's considered some things have never been solved.
Right.
And I think they do that every year, and there's more than one of these things. So they understand that it is an exercise of the imagination as well. And I have a book from a mathematician saying that it is poetry and it is like this. So it's not, yes, there's people who've been indoctrinated to math, especially in astrophysics. But I don't think it applies to all mathematicians everywhere. And I think that some people might be open-minded enough to then, look at the math of perspective, look at other kinds of math from things that are observable, refraction, the different kinds of science that we know that needs to be computed, so we understand it better, because it's what reality, with stuff that is empirical. And Dave has proven, that there's, for me, the take-home lesson is that, the curvature calculation is giving more slack to them. It's giving them a big kind of, help, a big hand, a boon or something, and still they, it's slack, giving a lot of slack, and still they couldn't prove a point. So, where to go from here? We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, when we got into flat Earth, I don't need to belabor the sort of curvature with people. But when we got into flat Earth initially, it was like the sun is, obviously we were given this massive 93 million miles by the heliocentrists, and that mass has varied from 27 million miles, 3 million miles, 103 million miles. It's gone all over the place over the years, and so that's how maths has been used to get different answers to suit different narratives. So maths is a very clever language, and very clever people have been designing all of our numbers all along. And so if we've just absorbed the numbers that we were given by the same system that said 93 million miles. In the first days of the first months and year or so of flat Earth, I was convinced that the sun was 3,000 miles away and probably 70 miles in diameter or whatever. And this was all, again, this was that first level of disinfo that was being fed to us, and so we now see, there's very few people who in the flat Earth who would see the sun as a physical object at a distance that's measurable to a fixed point on Earth and so on. Our understanding has developed along the way, and so I think that understanding that the curvature calculation, as we've been given 8 inches per mile squared, is yet more disinfo, and yet we would want to sit on that disinfo and not do anything with it, and not call it out, and not shame it out, and not shame ourselves for just going, just like the ballers say, well, what difference does it make if it's a ball or a flat Earth? It's all the same to me. Well, what difference does it make if it's 8 inches? Well, let me tell you guys, makes a freaking huge amount of difference. If their mass is 8 inches and the reality is thousands of inches per mile.
Dave, I don't think that it's not that we don't want to call it out. It's just that there comes a point where you have to say, you have to choose your battles. Let's put it that way. That's all I'm saying.
But if we can show this, then it's a big battle to fight.
I agree.
I agree. Tried,
but I don't think that's coming anytime soon. Look what where have we gotten with this today? I mean, we've basically rehashed exactly what we said 3 years ago, and I don't think it's going to change anything for anybody. So again, this is, to me, it's a matter of which battles are we going to pick.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
No, and I see your point there, Bob, because I do see what you're saying, that we can go out and observationally prove what they're already trying to say is the truth wrong. So, to add new elements or to say that. But I also understand the other side of the coin, that if you can come out with a way of proving it. I just tried, and everybody who looked at it said, "You don't understand math. That's not how you do it. That's not how you figure out curvature. That's not how." So eventually, I just kept running up against the wall. Well, I'm not going to convince, especially people who all went to school, people who had heavily fed this this line. And again, is my way of looking at it wrong? Well, it depends on how you discuss it. It depends on how you're looking at each problem. But for me, it's easy to kind of conceptualize, and I don't think the 8 inches per mile is correct on the sphere, but I think that we can show it to be wrong anyway, even on this place we live. So from there, then it just becomes how much are you going to take from these guys like the IIG, who will just say, "Oh no, light travels around the ball." So, anywho,
all right.
Yeah,
well, that's
it's
cool.
just,
I mean, I have the conversation, and I'm glad I've had the opportunity to kind of air this and get people thinking about it a little bit more. I wasn't aware that it had been tabled, in the past, but good for you guys for having gone there already. But I'm convinced that the 8 inches is just another deception, and I think that in time we will clarify what this nonsense ball of theirs should possibly look like, and to see someone put it into some sort of CGI rendering to say this is how it would feel, then maybe we'll get to that, and it would be a great evidence against this nonsense ball. But I really appreciate the opportunity to come and throw this up here. If I'm able to kind of improve on a presentation or put a little video together, I'll be sure to send that your way for further consideration.
Please.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. Sure. I mean, and yet again, it's not that we disagree with you at all. I mean, we totally get where you're coming from. Like I said, been there, done that. But, at some point, it just seemed like it became an exercise in futility. And that's, why we kind of slept off.
And I think I even saw a video of somebody trying to, when we said it was 8 inches per mile times 25,000, they tried to show that like in GeoGebra. And they were just dropping the line 8 inches and you're right, it's just a slope. If you just do 8 inches in a mile, then 8 inches in the next mile, 8 inches in the next mile, well, then you'll, of course, never come underneath yourself because you're just going down 8 inches every mile across. So there's never a bending back underneath you if you're just doing 8 inches per mile. So I understood where they were coming from as far as that goes. But yeah, the whole idea of curvature to me tells me that no matter where you're at on a circle, it should be constant. It should be the same.
Yes, right. Yes, a constant arc.
Right. The way that I see this is it's a lot like with the Black Swan picture where they gave them 5 feet, even though it's 1 foot. I think it'd be beneficial to be like, well, actually, this is not even right. Like it would be way more drastic than this. But for sake of conversation, we'll let you have your little equation. It still doesn't work. You know what I mean?
It still doesn't work.
Well, imagine if these guys have been defending the Black Swan or similar kind of imagery and saying, yes, that's just a little bit of refraction or a little bit of this or a little bit of that. And then you realize, oh, gosh, by the way, we had the math all completely wrong.
Oh, God, it would be the end of the world.
That platform could be, a mile beneath the water. And now what are you going to bring? Well, their arguments have all been exhausted on the 8 inches. So I think, I'm hoping that we can clarify this over the next months, and it'll mean those arguments become moot. And it's like, no, you've now spent your time exhausting yourself on saying you could explain why there's this and why there's that. Well, with a 0.3 and 1, there's no explanation needed.
Yeah, if anything, it's more preponderance of evidence, as Bob would call it.
Yeah, for sure. So awesome, Dave.
All right, thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. What else did I have? Did you guys see the John Thor video he put out recently? I thought that was pretty good. I don't know if you guys saw it with Eddie Bravo.
Yeah.
Yeah. God, John Thor makes great videos. He really does. That guy's awesome.
He does. So people should check that out. But I've
had the pleasure of doing some activism with him actually in London. Me and John Smith, Globe Live, we did a day together. He was so inspired by some of our activism. He jumped on a train or whatever and came and joined us for a day down on the South Bank in London last year. That was fun. So shout out to him and to Harry MacDonald.
I haven't even seen him do his last 3 videos. Is the Earth Round? He put out 8 hours ago. Haven't seen these. A Wizard did it. Delusions of Scientism. I'll have to check out some stuff. Certainly looks like he's been doing some good work. Is awesome as always. So thank you, John Thor. Make sure you subscribe to him.
Yep, and I got to say something, Dave. This is really cool to be able to finally talk to you, because I had seen you before, and then you and I kind of made this appearance in the Guardian piece, right? That is up to nearly 2 million views now, right?
Yeah.
But I really liked your opening scene about how you're out there and doing what you do every day. And I have a really deep respect and admiration for street activists doing what they do, because honestly, I'm not sure I have the balls to do that. Coming up and seeing what happens sometimes, and I don't know if I would lose it on somebody or what, but I have a lot of respect for what you do, and I'm glad that we finally got a chance to talk to each other today. After kind of co-starring in a big documentary together.
Well, it was my pleasure to be on with some heavy hitters, and the activism has been it's kind of hard work at times, in the soul journey that we're on, and some of my most well-received moments of activism have been either where I've been pushed by trolls or whatever to kind of reach a crescendo in the delivery of a piece, or sometimes where I'm having the opportunity to talk one-on-one with somebody, oftentimes a lady, but because they tend to be more receptive to some of this information about what is it beyond, what is the beyond the flat earth truth, because this is where I got in. I joined the club in 2015, 2016, and I was watching you guys grow your channels and what you do. Love that. And for me, after about 2016, I backed out of the Facebook groups that I was sort of arguing with people all the time, and in the YouTube channel, sort of arguing with people trying to, argue in favor, of course, of the flat earth. And because I was exhausting my sort of soul energy on people who were coming with a lot of anger and a lot of hate, and you get a lot of anger in the street too, by the way. But I realized that this flat earth is just a stepping stone or a platform upon which this game of life and creation and consciousness and our connection to something much higher and all of that is being played out. And it's almost like a Harry Potter stage. But, while you think you're playing your game on a ball, you're never going to get the stable footing that you need to play the game right. And so I've been trying to take my message beyond to sort of bashing people over the head with 8 inches or whatever. For me, there is this kind of there's this higher purpose to it, and so I've been with my channel Trinity 4. I've been trying to seek my own kind of higher purpose and my own higher self. I mean, people don't know me, but I went through agnosticism and atheism and all of that as I was growing up in adulthood, because I didn't see any purpose to this life and anything other than the material Darwinian kind of stuff that we're all fed, right? So capitalism and get ahead and all that stuff. And I never really bought into it. I never really bought into school. I never really bought into the system. I never really wanted to be seek out any sort of high achievement in anything. And then of course flat earth comes along and you realize, oh my Lord, one, I've been misled about my entire reality, and two, we might be something much, much higher. Now, I had an experience in 2015, just before I found flat earth. I had experience with dimethyltryptamine, with DMT. And so for me, it had given me this sort of insight into, like, there is something at the God level going on beyond death, beyond this material 666 world that we're kind of caught up in. There's something else. And so along with the flat earth truth, I was able to take my research down lines that I would never have gone before. And so for me, activism was about getting out there and starting to, because I realized we have a purpose, we have a mission, we have a responsibility to ourselves, to our community, to the world, to God, if you like, or the creator or creation or Gaia or whatever you want to attach to the higher thing that we're connected to. We have a responsibility to it, to end or to start to turn back the darkness and the deception and the misleading of the creation. I say to people like, I know this is a bit biblical, but God or the Creator is said to have created us in God's image. So we are, essentially, we are like the Creator. We are a part of the Creator, but we hate ourselves. We hate our neighbor. We look in the mirror. We don't like what we see. We hate the brown ones, the black ones, the Muslim ones, this one, that country one, all this sort of stuff. And we hating on God. And so for me, I found that there was a real passion to get out there and start to tell people that. But I was coming, I was joining the party a little bit late. I'd been busy 2016, 2017, having a new baby, and we've been trying to survive outside of the system for a few years. I don't take any benefits or any of that sort of stuff, and my work life and sort of ended when I started talking about all of this crazy stuff that people think is nuts. So for me, my entire life,
did the Guardian make it worse? The appearing on the Guardian piece, did that have any consequences?
Well, there's a kind of crazy story, because I was feeling really powerful at that point. Now, the Guardian moment was slightly engineered by them, because people had seen me doing a few, like my friend Robin lifting the lid. He had covered one that both Harry and Jason of the Disbury family, but Harry MacDonald and him had filmed me in Oxford doing this piece where I went for about 10 minutes, just kind of giving this fantastic. It was a really good thing, and so people had seen me doing this, and the Guardian were eager to have me do a piece like that to a crowd. And I turned up at the Speaker's Corner, and where Roxanne and them had set up that day was well away from the main crowd. So the Guardian mic'd me up and said, "Would you walk in? Would you create something for us?" So I basically walked into the center of Speaker's Corner with a mic on and just started yelling in order to try and generate this sort of affair. And so they clipped bits of that. My wife hates seeing all of that stuff. I've only watched it once because I do come across sort of angrier than I like, but obviously I have a mission. Now, something happened to me that day, and this people may find hard to accept, but a guy approached me, and he's doctored this. I won't say his name, I think, but I'll go and check him out. He's on Google. There's a profile for this guy. He's like does a form of cognitive behavioral therapy, and he approaches me and says, "I'm a doctor, and I'll meet you in a hotel in a week or two, whatever, in London, and I'll give you a session for free. What you need to have your confidence kind of improved, enhanced, yeah, because you've got an important thing to do, and you got this." Well, I am totally trusting in the journey that I'm on. I'm trusting in creating something more high, in something higher than me, and that has been guiding me, that has taken me to a place where at one point in 2014, I was a hero in my family, just published my book about my military, in battle and all that sort of stuff. And now, just 6 months, a year later, I'm telling everyone 9/11 was an inside job, and that the earth is flat. And I've become a complete pariah in my family. My employment opportunities have fallen to the floor. I'm now facing, and because I've been homeless now, I've got to that point where I'm now homeless. But now this guy says he can help me. So I just go along with it, and I meet him in this hotel room, and it's him sitting there with this sort of Malfoy type character, this blonde like Malfoy character from Harry Potter, and a form of wizardry was performed on me that afternoon. And I swear to you, I walked out of the hotel, staggered out of the hotel, and for the first time in the year that I'd gone, I'd started becoming very public about what I was doing. The first time I felt insecure, unsure, and for months at the end of that year, I couldn't get myself to Speaker's Corner because I became intimidated by that kind of thing. So I spent quite a lot of time trying to rebuild myself. I mean, one of my little baby boy, his hand and my wife's foot appear in the documentary in the piece because I refused to sign a release. They had some wonderful footage of Alexander, my baby boy, playing with a globe, and I didn't want them to use. I wasn't sure how they would use that, so I didn't allow them to use any of that. But in terms of how the pieces change anything for me, I'd say really not at all. I mean, I don't have. So I'm not like Mark Sargent where people walk in the street and go, "Oh, I've seen you on that documentary," you know. People have approached me about the Behind the Curve, and they often talk about Behind the Curve on the street. But that one, I would say, has not had really any impact on my story, other than that really weird thing. And by the way, there was whatever press we had. This was the original Globe Light tour back in 2018. It was the sort of culmination of that. And so we had built up quite a head of steam on the press side of things. And so if anybody wanted to see me and meet me, then they knew exactly where I was going to be that day. So was that guy coming there to meet me specifically? The way that he approached me, that he's not... and even his Malfoy friend on the day, I said, you know, how about 9/11? The guy didn't even know about 9/11. So I was like, well, why is this guy helping me if he isn't really that deep into the truth that he knows that the Earth is flat and all these sorts of things. So that's I'm glad I've had the opportunity to share that story. But it hasn't been like this smooth. Oh, all I enjoy doing is just sort of standing out there in the streets. I've had at Speaker's Corner, I've had some dude rush me with a phalanx of about 15, 20 men, come at me. This African dude like rushed right up to me, stood right in my face, and then walked off again. And then I've had these Hebrew Israelites come and tell me, that you're the sin, you're the devil, and all this sort of stuff. In fact, I was standing one time in Speaker's Corner with my baby boy. He couldn't have been a year old, and I had this guy like mouthing off at me and stuff. So actually, in some ways, it's like a test, and this activism and getting out, and I mean, just whatever it is that you guys are doing, like Globebusters and Jaron and stuff. I know watching you, Jaron, particularly like over the last 4 years, how you've honed the craft of what it is that you do. And the same with me with activism. Like this, some embarrassing footage of me in the early days of activism losing my cool, because it's hard to be heckled. It's hard to be called all sorts of names in the street, and then just carry on with life. But no, I'm totally invested in what it is we're doing. And for me, this has also been an evolution or a coming from the slumber of, this, I'm 45 at the time, 46 at the time. I don't see any purpose in life. It's all middle age. And now on the other hand, now I'm I started doing woodwork. I taught myself woodwork. I did a lot more gardening and took on a whole change of direction. I said to my wife back in 2016, I said, we have to be like Noah, but I spell it with a K, and be a Noah of the truth of what's going on, and prepare ourselves for, even if it's just spiritually, even if it's not all the cans and food and stuff like that, although it's a good idea. I think there's a spiritual thing going on. We're in some kind of some spiritual test. You can stay on the sofa if you choose, or you can start to wake up and start to make those changes in the spirit, in the you. Because as Michael Jackson said, not that I'm a big fan, but if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make the change. So that's really where I've been at, is trying to do the changes inside and not get lost in the anger of the street combat. And in fact, if anyone's watched my progress over the last 2 years as an activist, my need to argue with people is far less, and my desire to leave people with little nuggets, little seeds that they can take away and maybe do something with over the months and years ahead. then it's job done. Because like all of you, I suppose we thought in the first year we'd be able to convert the world overnight, but we didn't realize how deep the web ran and how clever the trick was that has been played on God's creation, on this creation of us. So there's a little bit of my background.
Words of wisdom from Dave from Trinity 4. No, it's good. I mean, it's I think a lot of us have gotten to the same point. That's the point where I've gotten, or the point that I've reached. I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone anymore, really. I just want to be me. I like to discuss things and listen to others who I respect, to be honest in my opinions and my reflections, and just to be a better person. I think, I want to feel comfortable in this world. I want to recognize the wizardry, to call it as I see it, to enjoy the like-minded. It's another big thing, to get healthier, to grasp what's important and leave behind what's not. Space is not important. Spinning on a ball is nonsense. Flying through vacuums of infinite universes is entertainment. It's deception. It's a construct. It's fake. And so talking about it makes me feel good. That's what I continue to do. And, to each their own, though. I really have gotten to that point where it's, we're not going to change the world overnight. It's going to take time, and people have to be they have to come to their conclusions on their own. And
imagine that with so much propaganda and so many lies, right? The misrepresentation that's traditional of the press coming at us, and still people are able to pass the word and make a difference. And like you've done, Jaren and Bob and everyone else, and Ido so much, and Dave here, everyone's doing their part. Imagine if that wasn't there, this massive hatred, or whatever it is, the trolling, whatever you want to call it, the space crack,
right?
Different names that it has, because like Dave was saying, it made a huge difference for him, and for a lot of people who were in that paradigm of the Darwinian, the materialism, even if they didn't even buy it, it's presented with such authority, and you don't have the kind of social recourse to other people to help you think through it, how it is BS.
There's nothing else presented in school, so you think that that's all that there is. There must be consensus on those items. There must be consensus that dinosaurs are 67 million years old. There must be consensus that the Earth is 4.54 billion years old and that the universe is 14 billion years old. There has to be consensus on those things, because that's what we're taught, that's what we're shown. And so, I think sometimes you just have to plant the seed into people to take a second look. And it may not be this week that they do it. It may not be next week. It may not be this year. But eventually when people do, they'll start to see all the flaws in it. And, that's all you can do. And you just hope that more people get the satisfaction that you've gotten out of realizing that we've been set up in a royal way, and we're far more important than we're being told, and infinitely more important. When you're told you're just a speck of dust in an infinite universe, when the complete opposite is the case, that the universe all revolves around the basement of the universe, which is the Earth.
Yes, and you're at the center of it. I have this analogy that I'd like to share with your guys this evening before we finish up, and that is to say that, I think the world works in nature works in cycles. We have a day and we have a night. We have a spring, summer, autumn, and a winter, and so when we think of the meta cycles going on, then perhaps Earth has been going, or humanity has been going through like a darkness, a winter, and then as the spring approaches, the early shoots, the early flowers, the crocuses, the daffodils, or whatever, they start to pop up, but you still get cold days. You still have a long way to go until the winter is truly behind you. And I think that's a little bit maybe what we've got going on here, is that we're some of those early flowers that are coming up as the spring approaches. And as the years unfold ahead of us, then more and more quickly, the rest of the forest floor and the meadow full of flowers is going to spring up, and there's going to be a lot more kind of people being able to see above the parapet of the bullshit and grow, their own true flowers. And so that's what I think is happening.
That's a great
possibly
analogy.
Is that we're the vanguard of the coming spring, and the plants, the other plants that are coming, and the animals of the forest, they need to see these early flowers, and then they will know themselves, yes, spring is coming, and we can all start looking forward to doing spring things. So that's my kind of positive, sunny way of looking at this, and rather than seeing it as like, oh shit, it's always going to be, this, whatever this darkness is that's held the human story so low, is always going to be in ascendance. Well, the night has to give way for the day, and the summer, the winter has to give way for the summer. And I think that perhaps, it's 1,000-year or 5,000-year cycle, who knows? But, there's some good news in the way that this is going to turn out for us eventually anyway.
That's a great analogy. It really is. And even if there is continued nuclear winter ahead of us, I'd rather be a flower in that meantime, than to contribute to it or to, be a fear porn and push the despair. No, I'd rather be the opposite. I'd rather be the flower saying it's going to be all right, and we're going to get through this, and there's better days ahead. Because I do agree with you that I think that it is cyclical, and betterness is ahead. It's just you might have to go through a little mud to get there.
Well, we've gone through the dark ages. I think we probably, we may have a little bit more dark ages to come. There's a thing that they have in the UK called horrible histories. I don't know if they have it in America for teaching children. And it's just like when you look at it, they try and tell you that in the 1600s and the 1500s, people just walked around with open wounds, and there was terrible kind of this and the rest. Well, that's what I think we're living in now, actually. I think that the whole of our history is sort of inverted, and that the golden, a much sort of higher society, higher times were in the past. We're coming through, or we've been in a dark age. We have perhaps a little, Corona and these kind of things are indicative of the system still trying to keep the game in the dark, as it were, for as long as they possibly can. But eventually the sun is going to burn through, and until then, yes, the forest needs bright flowers like you guys to point to other forest creatures to the way, the future.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave. I really appreciate you being on, and welcome back anytime if you have more you want to share. But we're already past the 3-hour mark, so let me just go through everybody and say our goodbyes. We'll start with Austin. You have anything coming up besides your continued live streams?
Nope, just the live streams, and unfortunately, I thought I had a debate with the professor lined up, but that dissolved. So yeah, as of now, just the streams.
Oh man, what happened? He just didn't want to talk to you after all?
Yeah, apparently when I brought up documenting it, it was a no-go.
Oh, gotcha. All right, well, maybe you'll find something eventually. And a big shout-out again. Thank you to everybody for the Super Chats. Really appreciate that, as always. Let's see. Iru, I believe, is off the call, so goodbye to Iru. Please support him if you can. Go to Patreon. He's on there. All his links are in the description. Subscribe to his English channel where he's going to go live there. Let's see here. Rodrigo, anything coming up?
Yeah, I've been working on the next issue of Space Crack. I gotta not make it one, like you said, in one issue magazine, one issue. So I don't want that to happen.
Right.
So working on that, already wrote a bunch of stuff on some of the things that we've been discussing.
Good.
Selling of fear, different kinds of hubris and arrogance that we see from the people that give us the answers for everything without giving us the means to question, which is what we should just seek, of course, and some other things. What I call a treatment protocol for space crack as well. And there's the Aereus report, which seems quite interesting. It's looking at a historical observation that's confirmed and documented, but from 1911, and then modeling it to show that it would be impossible in a ball, but going through a bunch of detail.
All right,
so I think an improvement on the last one. I think he's got he felt that I guess he can contribute, and this is nice that when we get people with the means, technical means to do research like this and present it to, share it and still be anonymous.
All right. Thanks for being on the show always. I appreciate it. And Dave, any final words or where people can find you?
Okay, just a couple of things. My friend Jack and his girlfriend Lisa, they were the longest standing members of the Globe Live tour last year in through Europe. You may or may not have seen Jeremy. He's stickered up his car and he's driving it over from Slovenia the next few weeks. He's got your name on it. He's got a bunch of Globebusters. He's got a bunch of people's names on it. You give him a good shout out. He's decalled up or stickered up his car. Him and her are doing like their own sort of road trip of flat smacking, and they've got a channel called The Real Hat Fits. So I would really encourage people to please go and subscribe to them. A little bit like Tommy, that flat fellow, we are keen to get them up to 1,000 subscribers so they can go live in the field. So The Real Hat Fits is the name of that channel.
Say it just so the real and then hat.
Yeah, so the REAL Hat Fits. The Real Hat Fits.
Fits. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, FITS. So please go and subscribe to them. They need as much support as we can give them. I know that they could do with some financial support to help them do this. Honestly, Jack is the hardest working guy I've probably ever had the pleasure of working with. He's very smart too. Lisa was obviously the longest on the tour. The two of them are going to make a fantastic addition to the activism sort of arena. They'll be going beyond just the UK borders, but there is a what they're calling a university tour coming up that Robin and a few other people have Sven and a few others have organized, as far as I know. Jason, of course, will be there with his big yellow van, the one that we toured in last year. So that's coming up. I'm also a guy who's into, I don't know if you guys get this in America, but we've got something called Robot Wars here in the UK. And it's just amateur robot builders who kind of get to smash robots against each other. Like they got hammers on them and saws and all this kind of thing. You know, they weigh 100 kilos, 250 pounds. You know, they're really big robots. Anyway, this guy is a friend or subscriber of my channel, and he's approached me and said, look, I would love to put a robot into the next biggest competition we've got coming up in the UK and call it like the Flat Earth or the Earth is Flat or something like that. Would you be willing to? He doesn't want to put it in his name because he's well known in the circles, but he would be more than keen to build it and have me steer it and be the driver and the kind of controller of it. So look out for that later in the year, Robot Wars, and you know that it'll be a little like Flat Earth FC.
Is that a TV show? Or is it?
Yeah, it's on TV. It's on TV. It's called Robot Wars, and I used to watch it years and years ago. Actually, truth be told, but a bit of a geek like that anyway. But so it's a fantastic opportunity. Hopefully, that'll come up in 2 or 3 months' time. And I'll obviously try and get whatever footage, coverage, or whatever of the Flat Earth smashing up in other things. That hopefully, that'll be what you see. For now, I think I'm on this sort of personal journey of trying to find my place and my way. And then, my wife and I have been without a home for a while. It has really robbed me of my kind of confidence to get out there and do more of the activism. But I've had a bit of support from my subscribers over the last few months, because since we've started asking for a little bit of help. I haven't got a Patreon, but I do have a PayPal account, which is in the name of my email address, which is trinityforman@gmail.com. I don't know if that'd be rude to ask, but we are on the bones of our backside here, trying to do the right thing. So if anyone has the ability to give us a little bit of help with just keep putting fuel in the tank and food on the table, then that's welcome at the moment. I'm hoping to go out to Portugal for a few months to go and work with a pal, Daniel, who's got a property out there. But at the moment, we don't have flights, we don't have any of that stuff. So we're not in a position to make any long-term commitments. What I can assure anybody who's in the Flat Earth community is that if you take Flat Earth as passionately as I do, if you take the truth about who we are what we are and what this place is as much as seriously as I do, then you would know that your whole life really, is centered around living truth, being in truth. And where this is going to take me as a spokesperson for our human story, I don't yet know. But I, just like you guys, feel like you've had a calling to act, to do something. Well, for me, this has been my calling to action, my return to the front line, and my desire to be an agent for the upliftment of the human story. So where that's going to take me over the next few months, the next few years, I'm not sure. I'm just putting one foot in front of the other, being present in each day, and looking to be the best father and husband and human and brother that I possibly can. So yeah, hopefully you'll see more of me in the streets, and obviously I'm doing my thing on my channel, Trinity 4, the number 4. But the Trinity is obviously the Trinity, the 3, and it was a nickname I got given in the army a long time ago. But a Trinity for man, because it is for all of us that we should be finding our Trinity, our connection to mind, body, soul, and all of these things that have been occluded or occulted from the common man's knowledge. So yeah, that's me. My wife and I have a little sub-channel we call the Trinities, which is more to do with some of the sort of home stuff, raising a child without vaccines, and as I said earlier on, without a birth certificate, and just trying to, some of the stuff that's off the activism bandwagon. So there you go. Thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for being on. I really appreciate it. And last but not least, Bob, I know we didn't get a chance to talk about Chris's video, but let's do that on Sunday with Globebusters, yeah? Bobby.
Sorry, I was on mute. No amateur move. Yes, we will definitely do that on Sunday. And it's a great video, and I just premiered it before this. So if you guys want to check it out on Globebusters, it's there. And we will see everybody on Sunday. But if anybody's wondering where to go afterwards, I think a lot of us are going to head over to Iron Realm Media, where this is going to be their last show for a while. They're going to be taking some time off. They've been doing their show continuously every single week for, multiple times a week, actually, both on YouTube and TFR. For years, frankly. And so they're going to take a little bit of time off. So this will be kind of a season/series, not series finale, but a season finale, I guess, for them. So I am putting in that link in the chat right now. So if you want to come over and join us and give those guys a shout out, show them a little bit of support, that would be awesome. Until that, see you guys Sunday.
All right, sweet. Yeah, everybody, thanks for joining us. And we will definitely see you Sunday, and then check out on Monday. We got the 200th episode of Jeranism Monday Night Raw. That'll be on the Jeranism Raw YouTube channel and DLive as well. And then as always on TFRlive.com. I think Bob will be joining me, Jason Lindgren, and we'll be taking your calls and just kind of hanging out and celebrating 200 shows, almost 4 years worth of shows. So should be fun, but That's about it for me. Thank you again, Dave, for being on. Thank you, Rodrigo, Iru. There's links to everything that was discussed in the description, and any of the stuff that we talked about, any of the links will be in there following the stream. So I think that's it, guys. I remind you to do your own research, because when you do, you'll never again believe what you've been taught. Till Sunday, this has been Jeranism. Peace.
Peace.